Okay, we are live and you may begin whenever you're ready, Michael.
All right, thank you, Sean. All right, welcome to tonight's January 16th, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. I call us to order and we have a quorum of five members out of nine. We are waiting on a sixth to come, but we can get started because we do have a quorum. I am looking for an approval of tonight's agenda.
To approve tonight's agenda.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Staff, do we have some last meeting minutes to approve?
Yes. All right, so we will be approving meeting minutes for November 14th, November 21st, November 28th, December 5th, December 12th, and December 12th. And one more. That was for 2023 and January 9th.
Okay,
2020.
and correct me, I heard December 12th and then I heard December 12th again. Is that accurate?
So we have
There's-
December 5th, and December 12th.
Okay, okay.
And then we have
So-
January 9th.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 14th, November 21st, November 28th, December 5th, December 12th, and January 9th?
So move.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes.
Let the record show that Emily has now joined the call.
Great, welcome. I am now going on to look for any general member comments that are not in reference to any application tonight. Are there any general member comments? I don't see anybody raising their hand. So I think we can jump right in. So first up is application item F, which is 2244-A Stonewheel Drive, Stonegate Village Apartments. You guys are back.
Yes, just asking the applicant to unmute. One moment. All right. I'm sending Armour, you're unmuted, and I'm going to unmute Mark. All right, Mark, you're now unmuted. And you can begin whenever you get ready.
Sure. Thank you, LaShonda. And good evening, Design Review Board. My name is Mark Buenavista. I am with the Fairfax County Department of Housing and Community Development, and I'm here joined by one of my colleagues, Anwar Iqbal, as well as some members of our consultant team that has been working on the Stonegate Village renovations that we're going to review tonight. From Grimm Parker Architects, I have with me Kathleen O'Hearn, and from the landscape architect LSG Landscape Architecture, I'm joined by Connie Fan and Lori Beth Donachie. So thank you again for taking the time to revisit this application for Stonegate Village. I'm sure many of you are aware of the property, but just to level set from about a year ago when we last visited you, we'll go through a few slides as well as the scope of work that we're seeking your approval for before we begin to engage in a more thorough construction document phase as well as moving forward with our public procurement process and alternate rehabilitation of the facility. LaShonda, if you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, and with the Fairfax County Department of Housing and Community Development, the design team, Griffin Park Architects and LSG Landscape Architecture. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Just for a refresher, this particular property consists of about 230 multifamily affordable rental units. This facility was built in 1971 and underwent a minor renovation in the early 90s. The property is owned by the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority and managed separately through a third-party property management firm, Edgewood. In terms of the folks that live in this community, along with the other developments within the FCRHA's housing portfolio, really sort of our main base of residents are really working class folks. Just to give you a little bit of context, a majority of our properties are serving households in and around 60% of the area median income, which in the county of Fairfax is about $152,000 for a family of four. So that gives you sort of a kind of a real context in terms of the households and folks that we're serving. If we can go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, the property, had a minor renovation in the early 90s, but is really in need of a full renovation, rehabilitation of the entire property. Up to this point, we've gone through an initial concept and schematic phase. We've gone through the design development phase, which has sort of taken us to the major scope items that are under consideration tonight. It's a fairly large property, as you know, off of Reston Parkway. Before we wanted to proceed with a very thorough construction document process, we wanted to make sure that we were on the right track in terms of the overall scope, particularly as it relates to these items that are under consideration tonight. Just to recap, some of these things we had gone to you before, but we will be seeking a specific approval with what we're proposing in terms of some significant changes to the landscape design, both things that are necessary for the property to deal with some existing site conditions and erosion issues that we're currently contending with. But also introduce some enhancements that will improve the overall accessibility in and around the property, as well as to the individual buildings themselves. We'll also be seeking to get approval for the overall lighting approach to the property. And again, a lot of these are sort of necessary upgrades to both increase and improve the quality of light that's currently on site, as well as improve existing security and safety. We'll be asking to, among other things, approve a few exterior changes, notably some light fixture changes. We are going to be doing a full window replacement of all 14 buildings. Some of the minor elements here, you can see 6 and 7 through wall grill and some dryer caps that are visible from the exterior. But more importantly, in item 4, we'll really be seeking your approval for what we're proposing relative to the exterior finishes. We've proposed a specific set of materials to replace the existing stucco siding and wood trim on site with more durable finishes. Our hope or intent is to seek obtain your approval specifically for the material, and understanding that there's a lot of discussion and opinions on color. If we need to come back before the DRB down the line to get or provide more options or reach consensus, on the color selection, we're happy to do so, but at least coming out of this meeting, our hope we would be able to get approval for the specific material selection. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kathleen O'Hearn with Grimm and Parker to start taking us through the existing conditions as well as the improvements we're proposing on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Again, I'm Kathleen O'Hearn, project architect from Grimm and Parker Architects. So LaShonda, if you could go to the next slide. This part of the presentation I'd like to go through somewhat quickly. It's quite a few existing condition photos so that you can understand really what the overall features of this area is. You can see here, it's one of the buildings. There's a lot of slope here. There's a lot of very large trees. It's very shady. There's a lot of runoff. There are a lot of things, a lot of plants can't grow in the because it's so shady. Next slide, LaShonda. This is a view between the two buildings. We have nicknamed this the Muse. So between the two, each of the buildings, there, as Mark mentioned, there are 14 buildings, and they are paired together. And there's a walkway between each pair of buildings. Next slide. Again, this is another view of another pair of buildings. This is from a Reston Parkway, actually. Next slide. Again, this is another view of another building in the Muse. You can see one of the entryways. Again, you can see there's a lot of these are crepe myrtles that are very overgrown. It's very shady. There's a lot of bare spots because some plants are having trouble growing. Next slide. Just another view of some buildings on the site. Next slide. It's another view of a Muse between two buildings. Some things to note, again, there's some grade. You can see there's some stepping down. There's also some cracking and algae growing on the existing stucco facade. Next slide. Here are two more views of a few other buildings. You can see an entryway here on the right-hand side. Next slide. Again, another view on the right-hand side of between two buildings, which we have nicknamed the Muse. You can see, again, there's some steps going down. It is not accessible. On the left, you can see an entryway. Again, you're seeing some steps. Many of these buildings are not accessible. There's a lot of grade change. Next slide. This is another view of another set of buildings, and also in the foreground, a little bit of the playground, which we know we need to come back to you once we have gotten to the point where we have specifics on playground. We will do that at a later date. Next slide. Another view of the Muse. Next slide. This is another view of the site. And again, you can see there's a lot of bare spots, a lot of very tall, shady trees. Next slide. Another view of the Muse. Again, a lot of grade. Next slide. This is the community center and the laundry room. These are the community where the community can come together. And again, you can see even though there's a ramp here, it is not meeting ADA accessibility grades. We're looking to fix that so that everything is truly accessible. Next slide. Here's a view of one of the dumpsters. And again, similar to the playground, we know that we will come back for Reston Association's, for the DRB review for upgrades to the dumpster, the playground, and the next slide, I believe, is the mailboxes. So that will be at a later date. But again, we really wanted to give you an idea of what this property looks like, the way the buildings look, the fact that there's a lot of grade, there's a lot of runoff, there's a lot of shade. Again, there's also a lot of algae and cracks in the stucco, and these are all things that we are looking to upgrade this property. And I believe the next slide is to Lori Beth. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Beth Donachie with LSG Landscape Architecture. I'm a landscape architect and the arborist on the project. So we looked at a number of trees on the property, and there were 263 that we're proposing to be preserved, and we have some plan views of that later on. And there are 172 trees being removed, and we'll get into a little bit more about reasons for that later. And then we'll also have some plans showing the planting. It's going to be primarily native vegetation and a mix of trees, shrubs, and perennials to provide a year-round interest. So next slide. Just to recap some of the history of the project, we were last here, February 21st, 2023. We talked about some of the exhibits and the trees that are being proposed for removal. And then following that meeting in March 2023, we met on site with a few DRB members and some of the county staff. We walked around and looked at the trees, and we talked about the trees within the muse are generally more ornamental trees like crepe myrtles that have become overgrown and are going to be more difficult to preserve when we go to make the ADA accommodations on the sidewalks. And during that meeting, we discussed that is, not really the focus of what the tree removal concerns are. It's more with the larger trees on other parts of the property. And so following that meeting, we went on site and tagged all the trees being proposed to be removed with orange tape. And so we can go to the next slide and show some of the plan views. This overall plan view, you can get just a general sense of all the trees we're preserving are in green, and the trees being removed are in red. And we looked at a couple different things when we were looking at why we were removing the trees. So the categories were ecosystem health, which covers both individual trees having and being in decline for one reason or another, but also overall the health of the property. As we said, some of the trees have become so overgrown that, maybe they're crowding each other, or they might be creating such a dense canopy that the grass underneath is not growing, and then that leads to erosion issues. We were also looking at making the site more accessible, and in order to do that, we're going to have to do a lot of grade changes, and that will be difficult on the trees. So that's particularly between the muse. And then also to address erosion concerns, there are some areas where in order to address the erosion issues, we have to do some ground disturbance. So if you go to the next page, please. This is a more detailed view, and here you can see a little better that the tree removal is mainly happening between the mews as part of the sidewalk changes. But around the perimeter, there is a lot of tree preservation because we aren't doing work there, and the trees there are in good enough condition to preserve. And if you go to the next page, you can see the southern portion of the site. And same thing happening here. The tree removal is mainly happening in between the mews with those more ornamental tree species, things like crepe myrtles and magnolias and maybe some hollies or something like that. If you go to the next slide, please. So here, just highlighting a few existing conditions that are specifically about the trees. In the upper left, we're showing some examples of where the tree canopy has shaded out the grass, and then there's bare earth there. The upper right, we're showing how the existing playgrounds are often very interlaced with existing trees. So when we upgrade the playgrounds and particularly try to make them accessible, it can be challenging to save all the trees in that scenario. And then in the lower left, you have a summertime photo of the mews and how dense it can actually be. And you can see how the trees are sort of leaning in, looking for a little bit more light and space to grow. And then on the right, you have an example of a tree that's in decline with some invasive vines growing on it. That's primarily, down in the southern part of the site by Reston Parkway, where you start to have trees that are impacted by invasive plants and also by just declining over time and being a little unsafe to keep. And then on the right, we have a key map where these photos are taken and also some views for perspectives that we created. So the perspective locations were determined during our site visit in March with the DRB members. And we talked on site about what views made the most sense to do. And, we took the photos then and then worked through what the proposed conditions are. So if you go to the next slide, we'll look at the first view. So this view is looking down one of the mews, and you can see that we've planted it with a little bit less trees so that it's more open. People can see through the mews as they walk through it to feel safer. And also the residents will have more light in their windows, making the inside space enjoyable as well. And then to address the accessibility issue with the steep slopes, we have handrails, and then also the meandering path will help make the grade easier to navigate. And then we have plenty of planting to have year-round interest, shrubs and different perennials to provide a little color. And if you go to the next slide, you can see what it will look like from the outside edges of the property looking in at the mews. And this will be from the southern part along Reston Parkway looking in. And if you go to the next perspective, please. This is the area in between the buildings, not the mews entrance, but where the backs of two buildings meet. And these are areas where we have some of the larger native trees, things like oaks and eastern white pines. And so here we're proposing to save a majority of the trees, but maybe take out a tree or two where it's in decline, or just to create a little bit more sunlight and then also provide layers of planting for interest, but also erosion control. So you can also see these brown strips going across, and those are wattles, which would be straw and other natural materials. So they'll provide immediate erosion control without damaging the tree roots very much, since you don't need a foundation. You just take a wood stake and hammer it in. And then over time, those will start to degrade, and the plants will have established by then, and their root systems will provide a greater erosion control during rain events. This view, we also have other slides that show this too, but some of the buildings are experiencing erosion very close to the building, and flooding inside the building. So we're also having all this planting and the wattles to help redirect the water a little bit, keep it away from the building, and also make sure there's not bare earth anywhere that's then moving over to other parts of the site and collecting on the sidewalks. If you go to the next slide, this is our planting plan, and we've shown the preserved trees with the green circles, and then we have some different colored hatches showing the different perennials and shrubs and trees that we're planting, just so you can have a sense of how lush and green the site will be. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the southern part of the site. And again, you can see how many trees we're preserving, especially around the edges of the property. And in the next slide, we have some more examples of the erosion control that we're doing. So the larger top image is the existing condition. You can see a very large swale and then some bare earth near the building. So another way to address that when we don't have tree roots to compete with, we can have a timber retaining wall. And this will fit into the rest of the site nicely because there are existing timber walls on site. And then that in combination with planting will help slow down the water and provide better erosion control. So we can avoid situations like the upper two photos there. And in the next slide, we have a section, a little bit more information about how the wattles will work. So in the upper section, you have the existing condition where it's just the trees on the slope, and the trees can provide some erosion control, but there's still areas underneath that are bare. So when we add the wattles to help slow things down while the plants are establishing, and then have a more dense ground cover and shrub layer, it'll really help provide another level of protection. And we have one more slide here on accessibility. So the top graphic, it shows inaccessible routes in pink and accessible routes in green. So you can see in the current conditions, if you have any mobility issues, it can be pretty difficult to get around the site, even from the parking lot to your building, depending on which building you're in. So in our proposed conditions in the map below, you can see what an improvement there is. you can see how much more green is on the site and how many more buildings will be accessible to the residents. And even for people who don't have mobility issues, if you have small children or you've just worked a long day, it's nice not to have a bunch of stairs and lugging your groceries down the site. So it's really beneficial for everyone. So that concludes LSG slides. And LaShonda, could you please switch it over to Kathleen?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Lori Beth. I'm going to go through a few more specifics, particularly right now, the site lighting. And first of all, I want everyone to know that all of the fixtures that we are proposing are full cutoff fixtures. This first slide is noting the replacement head for parking lot lights. So in order to provide 1 foot candle of lighting level for all of the parking areas, we will need to replace some existing parking lot headlights, and we will also add some parking lot lights. Next slide. The image on the left is a photometric image for the entire site. I know it's crazy small, it's difficult to see, but in general, the blue denotes where there are zero, it's 0. And at the reddish brown, that is where the light is, and the light is concentrated, as you can see, at the parking lot areas and also in the areas between the building pairs, which again, we're calling the muse. And then on the right is an image of what we are proposing for the more kind of a more residential feel. It's the muse lighting. And then on the far right is a wedge-shaped light that will be the building mounted lighting to provide light, particularly at the doors. Next slide. Here are the cut sheets of the 3 lights that we are proposing. Again, from the left, we have the wedge LED light that'll be building mounted predominantly at the building entrances. The middle light is the parking lot headlight. Again, all 3 of these fixtures are full cutoff lights. And then on the far right is the top of the lighting that we are proposing for the muse. Again, it's a little more residential and still keeping in the feel of the lighting that we have existing on this site currently. Next slide. The next element of this proposal we'd like to talk about is the siding. And this is a close-up of one of the buildings. You can see the existing siding is stucco. There are a lot of cracks, there's a lot of patches. There are areas where it is discolored, a lot due to algae or mold, and this is throughout the property. Next slide. What we are proposing is a hardy plank type composite material, and our big conceptual idea is that we would like to break up the existing 14 buildings into what is considered their addresses. Most of the buildings of the 14 buildings, 12 of the buildings are broken up into 3 different addresses, and that's what we're showing here. And we are proposing that we could break up the color of the siding into their addresses. We think that it breaks down the scale a bit, and it also allows the residents to, have a little more a feeling of ownership. That I live in the blue building, or I live in the beige building, and we are proposing a smooth 6-inch exposure And also the trim will also be smooth and it'll be wide. It'll be 5.5 inches wide. And that is mimicking what is currently on site. Again, I do want to reiterate these colors, we're proposing some colors, but we're very flexible. We really want to work with you on the particular color selections. Next slide. This is a diagram of the 14 different buildings. And again, we're trying to show you how we'd like to break up the site. We'd like to vary the different colors on site. We're proposing here 4 different color palettes, the main siding plus a trim color. And again, we're just would like to break it up and give some identity to each of the addresses. Next slide. The next 2 slides, this is the alternate palette. And if you, LaShonda, if you could go back 1 slide too. This is the primary proposed color palette. It's a little bit warm and more natural colors. And again, LaShonda, if you could go to the next slide. This is a cool alternate palette. Again, we really want to work with you to pick out the particular colors. This is just a proposal. We're really hoping that you can accept this conceptually with the hardy plank siding and trim and breaking up the addresses into various color schemes. Next slide. This is the proposed window placement. Again, because this is publicly bid, we will propose three window manufacturers. This particular window that we're showing the cut sheet for, this is our basis of design. This is the window that we're hoping most to get. But again, since it's publicly bid, the potential exists that we would get a different manufacturer, but it would still be, again, we're proposing a slider window. This is what is there existing, and we're proposing to kind of replace it in kind, but definitely more energy efficient for these buildings. Slide. This is showing you the cut sheet and some images of the through wall split louver that we are proposing. We are upgrading the HVAC systems for all of these buildings. It will be much more energy efficient, much more comfortable for the residents. This is what the units look like. It's very similar to what is there existing. The primary difference being that some of the existing units are so low on the first floor that they're actually having some flooding issues where the louvers are actually at grade. So at those units, we are proposing raising these louvers up. It will be very similar in size and look, but again, we're raising it up so that they will not have that flooding issue. Next slide. And this, again, we understand you would like to see all of the elements that will be on the facade. This is a very standard dryer wall cap that we are proposing because we are adding washers and dryers to each of the units. I think that will make a big difference for these residents. And this is the cap that we are proposing. You can see that it comes in 4 different colors. We will probably go with either the white or the almondy beige color, depending again on what colors we finally select for the building. And you can see it here mounted in hardy board siding. Those are the elements that we are proposing that we're hoping that you can make a direction on for this submission. And next slide. I believe that's I'll hand this back off to Mark. Thank you.
Mark,
Mark Buenavista.
you're unmuted.
Thanks. I just muted myself and wasn't able to unmute. So thank you, LaShonda. So just to recap, I know it was a lot of information that we went through tonight. And again, if our intent will be to go back before the DRB, particularly with regard to some of these details coming out of our construction document process. But just to recap, we are seeking your approval for the more significant scope items to make sure that we're in alignment with the DRB on the proposed improvements and enhancements to the landscape design, enhanced lighting, the approval of the light fixtures, the approval of the hardy plank. And again, if we can't settle on the proposed, color palette or color selections, we're happy to come back before the DRB again at a later point to reach consensus. The proposed window assembly through wall grills and dryer caps. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, we appreciate your time and consideration for our proposal. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to the DRB for any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, team, for this application as well. LaShonda, are there any affected parties on this one?
No affected parties.
Okay. Let me go around the room and see if anyone has any questions for any of the project team, and then we will have some discussion. Okay. So, John, did you have any questions?
No, we reviewed this earlier in an earlier phase and pretty much agreed with a lot of their material choices at that time. And it's a development on that. I don't have any questions. I like the materials that they've selected. Color schemes, we can revisit that, but I really like the initial warmer scheme more than the more blue scheme. But that's not a major deal. And other than that, I'm in agreement with what they're trying to do here.
Okay. Brian, did you have any questions?
Just a couple questions. My first question on the landscape plan, will the straw, the wattles, will they eventually be covered by plantings? I know you said they'll degrade a little bit. Will they eventually kind of just kind of go away over time? That's a question for Lori Beth.
Lori Beth, yeah.
I've requested that they unmute.
Yes, so the answer is really both. That they will degrade a little over time, so they will eventually, flatten. And then also the plants themselves will grow over either with their coverage or, if there's shrubs near it, the shrub will start to grow over it. So eventually they'll disappear and you probably won't see anything.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just let's see, two questions on the architectural side, and they're kind of similar in nature. Just regarding the dryer caps, and then the window sash color and window frame. Will those be the same across all buildings, or will they change? Will you have different selections based on the color of the siding, for example?
Our proposal would be to change with the siding. For instance, the dryer cap could change with the siding to blend in a little more, and similarly with the windows to blend in better with the trim color that is selected. But similar to the siding, we would like to work with you. I think that the color selections will be we can come to a consensus on that and what all of the elements look like together.
Yeah, and Kathleen, if I can chime in here, I think a lot of it will just depend on, us mocking up, that the window package in combination with ultimately, where we're leaning in terms of color palette for the siding, because sort of my off the cuff sort of reaction to that is twofold. One is that it could start looking a little strange if you start shifting colors, with the window sashes from, I guess, um, uh, you know, building address to building address, where it might warrant a little bit more consistency. So I can imagine that there could predominantly be a darker color that, the window package could be basically consistent across the board, where really the variation is in the siding and trim. Or it could be very well that, changing up the window colors in accordance with the color palette for the respective building addresses could make sense. I would say that given the basis of design for Windows and just Windows in general, there tends to be less variety in terms of the types of colors that might otherwise be available versus the variety that you might otherwise get, with the siding itself. So that may factor into consideration of the overall approach because, if there's a lot of inherent variety, um, of hardy plank colors that can otherwise be paired with appropriate colors for the window package, it might make more sense to keep a little bit more consistency in the window package that sort of across the board complements the exterior. But a lot of that we may just have to look at because honestly I can't tell you one way or another if they're it may look great if we introduce that level of variety. It may not, so um, I, I would say we should probably be open to that. But yes, I think we're open to that possibility.
Um, okay, thank you. And then I will say just in terms of I think there's a lot of really good slides in here with great information. I really appreciate the diagram that shows how you're breaking down each kind of cluster of buildings into their different the color palettes. I think that was really, really helpful. I think that some of the kind of colored landscape views are really helpful to show what's going on. I agree with John. I think, if there's an option between the two color palettes, I am leaning towards the first one, which seems like it's your preferred palette as well. Kind of the warmer colors just seems kind of more fitting for the site. But I think it's really well done. So I do like that part. And Michael, that's all for me now.
Okay. Yeah, and I just because we're talking about it, I just want to clarify a question you asked. So eh, I one question I wrote down was, so you guys still haven't picked a window color yet? Because I guess I thought that you guys were proposing to go with the white windows, but it sounds like that's still up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's still up in the air, again, dependent on, the color palette that we, I guess, move towards. And it seems like the warmer palette would be, something that we'd be going towards. But I think really the important sort of decision point for us is just the proposed window typology and just sort of basis of design because we can at the end of the day we can pick any color that makes sense and so it's not ultimately critical for us to select it tonight and a lot of that as I mentioned with the siding palette I don't think we're fixed on but I think really the decision that we would hope to get here tonight is approval of the window selection we can come back for color.
All right, just clarifying that. Bruce, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood what the plan is for the roof and the doors.
Kathleen, can you speak to that?
Yes. So for the roof, actually, the roof was replaced very recently, so there is no intention to change the roof at all. As far as the fascia, though, we are proposing looking at that, and on a case by case, essentially a building by building case. And if it's in poor condition, we will replace it and it will match the trim. As far as the doors will be replaced and they will be a similar color to the windows. That is the intent. It'll most likely be storefront doors, and we can come back to Reston Association if you need to review that in detail.
Thank you. That was it.
Just piggybacking on that fascia question. So in like your renderings that you guys showed, it looks like all the buildings were going to have the exact same fascia and rake board colors. But what you said is that they're actually going to be the trim colors. Is that accurate?
I think we would propose matching the trim color, but again, I think we would like to work with you on the particular colors, and that can be a detail that can be worked out, what makes the most sense. Currently, the fascia matches the trim, but if you remember from the photos, each building has one color for the siding and one color for the trim and the fascia. And what we're really proposing is to break these buildings up into their addresses and have each building have its own identity.
Yeah, Steph, if you go to slide like 35, 36, I actually think it's pretty strong to have them all be the same. I think it's actually kind of nice. There's so much undulation. Okay. There's going to so much change that I'm afraid that the painter may not know whether to paint it the what trim color to paint the fascia, because it's attached to one building, but it's actually, you more see it with the other. So I actually kind of like it where it's all one selection.
I think that's easy enough. And I totally agree. It can get tricky with the painter. I totally agree with that. So
that way, your notes are easy. Paint all fascia and rakes in one color.
Sure.
Yep.
That's easy enough to do.
Yeah, and Michael, I tend to agree with you on that, just because I can imagine that there are, all sorts of wonky turns and corners where it would just get a little confused, trying to execute that the right way.
All right. And let me go to Emily. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess the only question that I have at the moment, one is just a confirmation on what the plan is with the wattle stakes and the timeline on that, because they can take 3 to 5 years to degrade, but they're going to be held in place. I don't know if the plan is to have those. It says 1x1s in the packet. I'm assuming that they're going to be pressure treated and need to be removed at some point. But I'm just curious as to what the plan is with that and how long in the process, is it going to be a year, 6-month mark, and when are those going to be removed?
I mean, that could be part of like an overall maintenance thing. But yeah, it could be good over time to remove the stakes so that they're not hanging around.
So, Laura, I think my understanding is that they're to be pinned in place and that they are biodegradable.
The wattles themselves are biodegradable, but the stakes won't be.
Yeah, you're talking just about the stakes.
Right. I'm just concerned because it's going to be a long time that they're going to, it's just going to be a long time that they're there. And also they're a bit of a safety hazard for if this is, going to be an open place like the drawing that we have, for when they'll be removed and if it'll, kind of not be an eyesore. So that's something to think about. And then the only other question that I had was, I saw a detail for timber retaining walls, which is pretty standard for 6x6s, but there's also a note about segmental block retaining walls, and I didn't see any detail about what that material would be. what type of segmental block, what coloring we were thinking.
There's
Yeah.
no segmental block. There's no segmental block.
Okay, perhaps that's in an older version of the packet, but many of the retaining wall callouts say segmental, and there is a detail for a segmental retaining wall. So perhaps that's just a clarification to make during the construction document process.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, understood, and we'll correct that.
Yes.
Those were the only questions that I had.
Okay. Elena?
Well, I hate to be the contrarian, and I know that you have a difficult task in breaking up these elevations, but they still seem pretty flat to me. Maybe it's because of the way they're rendered. I'm looking at 35, slide 35, at least in the package in my computer. You know, that I totally agree that we need to break up these elevations. It just, I don't know, it just looks kind of like a timid color attempt in that view. And I'm just, I mean, was there any thought given to, you know, calling out the portions of each elevation within the buildings that protrudes, you know, like the bump outs, maybe getting a little more creative while you tried to bring color into the elevation and not having everything white stucco?
I think we can work with you on color. I think we would have concerns if every bump out was a different color. It would
Yeah,
it would be too much. If you're concerned that the color palette is too similar, you know, maybe we could be a little bolder in our color selections, or the trim color. If you remember, the existing buildings are all one color with one trim, but that trim is very bold.
I understand.
So we could consider that.
I'm not suggesting that every bump have a different color. But for instance, you could have a blue house and a green house and a beige house, or that's the colors as they look on my monitor. But they all have a white or an off-white bay on them or something like that. So that within each elevation of each building, it's just not all one color. It just seems to me that like I guess it seems to me that a more modern approach to breaking up elevations is to have repetitive elements that have a certain articulation to them that breaks up the elevation even further into smaller pieces. It just seems to me like you've got, I mean, clearly that's what you've got. You've got a chunk of this, a chunk of that, and another chunk. And it just, and maybe it's because of the way the perspectives is drawn and not, you know, the way it will be envisioned in reality. I say drawn because I'm old, the way the perspective is generated. But it just, and I know you've got a difficult problem to work with and you've got budgetary constraints. It just, you know, it isn't compelling. It looks, to be honest with you, it looks like subsidized housing, and I was hoping to do something better by the occupants.
I completely understand. We can, as we've noted, we can definitely work with you in a lot of ways. I would say that these color selections, I mean, it's paint. So this is easy to do at this level, and even through CDs, is to pick different color palettes. Currently, again, these buildings, the entire building is one color. And we are proposing a palette to have 4 different building colors with 4 different color trims to break it up. But we certainly can work with you and fine tune it. I don't know if you've been to the site. That might be very helpful.
I've been to it.
Understand.
Yeah, I've been here 30 years and I live down the street from it, so I'm very familiar with the site.
Great. One of the things is that these buildings on the they, on first glance, they look to be all identical, but actually they really aren't. So there is some variety to it, and I think that we can work with that. And I think again tonight we're hoping to just get approval on the material changes, and we can certainly work with you on the color palette.
I have no exception to the materials, you know.
That's
and I have no exception to what you're trying to do. I guess I'm just trying to see if there's something else we could do. I mean, I think the presentation and the landscaping looks so, you know, compelling for the residents. And you know, I just asking if you've thought of other ways.
Certainly. I think we can definitely work, like as we said, we can definitely work with you. I guess, LaShonda, if you can go to, it looks like it's slide 46 with breaking it up, you know, again, you know, our first thought was to break it up by address. There are 6 residents that live in each address, 2 on each floor, and there's 3 floors. And I think, you know, it provides an identity to say I'm the blue one or the green one or the beige one. But if that's not compelling enough, we certainly can work it out, and maybe you know, changing up trim colors, or as you suggested, maybe having a bay that is a different color. We can certainly look at that.
When I think it would also help to have actual kind of front face-on elevations to be able to make those distinctions and be able to maybe make some of those decisions. It's, you know, obviously right now I'm sure you guys are, you know, still in the you know, SD phase maybe, and you're just not quite there yet. But, you know, having actual elevations or a general elevation of each block of these would definitely be useful, I think, in helping Elena maybe visualize what you guys are doing.
Certainly.
From that standpoint. So just a thought with that. Elena, did you have any other thoughts, questions?
Yeah. No, thank you.
I just have a couple questions, and I'll go through them quickly because it's a little bit long. So we answered the window color gutters. Are you guys proposing to put back gutters, tie in gutters to these storm drainage systems, kind of just plain white K-style gutters with normal downspouts, or what's your plan?
I'm not sure if we have a good photo of this. I guess LaShawn, maybe some of the existing photos. There's actually on the fronts of the building, the buildings that face the mews, they do not have gutters. And it is only on the backs of the buildings that have gutters, and I believe they are all a uniform color. But we can certainly, again, you can see that actually, yes, LaShonda, that's a great image. You can see, and they are all, you know, white or ivory. But again,
I assume those are going to have to get all replaced during this project.
Okay.
I'm just guessing.
Sure. And then they can go along with the color scheme.
No, I'm not saying that one thing or other. I just think we need to have it. We just need to know what you're doing going back with that. That's all. I mean, white gutters
Okay.
can work on these, the color palettes that you guys have. Then we might incorporate the white window and it might all work together. And I think that's where an elevation, would be advantageous to have. I just want you guys to kind of think about that as an item because there will be a lot of gutters. I did notice on the front that they have that super steep kind of, I don't even know, it's not really a mansard, but I don't know what it is, but it has
Somewhat
no
like
fascia
that.
board.
It
It
has
has
no
no,
fascia. That's right. It
yeah,
just is like
it has
a
nothing. It just kind of
yes,
there. So,
that's correct.
and I think that's contributing to some of the landscaping. Kind of that's why they have a lot of those weird timber uh boards that are acting as like retaining walls. And it sounds like Lori Beth had like somewhat of a solution for some of those areas where it's causing some drainage concerns. The other question I had, and this one is more for Lori Beth, are we going right now in this community? There's asphalt paths, there's concrete, there's a lot of variation with these new ADA accessible routes. Is this all going to be concrete or is it going to be a mixture still, or what's kind of the plan there? I know that was kind of up in the air when we were on the site visit.
We aren't going to change absolutely every path on the site, but in between the mews here, this is going to be concrete. And then around the edges where it's asphalt already, if we're not disturbing that, then the asphalt will stay. If we need to patch something or change grading, we'll keep that as asphalt. So there aren't multiple transition points.
Okay. And then there's some existing floodlights that exist on the property now. I know, I'm sure, I think when we were on the site visit that the management company had put them up just from a safety concern. Is there any plan to go back with keeping those floodlights, new floodlights, maybe ones that are motion sensor versus staying on all the time? I know there's like one or two that literally no matter what time of day I drive by this site, it is just on full blare. Could be 8 in the morning, could be 8 at night. And I'm just curious if the floodlights, are you guys going back with those or kind of what's the plan?
Yeah, so I can chime in on that, Michael. I think certainly we would have to discuss this with the operations side of the housing department with our third-party property manager. But I think a lot of, sort of the reaction to the floodlights has just been the fact that it's been underlit. So I think with the improvements that we will be or are proposing for both the site lighting, the replacement fixtures in both the buildings as well as in between the mews, that those conditions will improve significantly enough. Well, where I think we can par that back. But again, that will have to be a conversation with our operations folks to just better understand if there are any additional considerations. But I agree with you. I think more can be done with that. So we're open to that.
Yeah, I just think we have the opportunity now that instead of having that floodlight that's on all the time, if that's a problem spot, let's either address it now with some more pathway lighting or, do something to help alleviate the concerns now that's a little bit more architecturally pleasing and, it isn't distractive, I guess would be my answer. And that kind of leads into my question. Is there any way we can get the photometric plan in a better format to understand and read? I couldn't see how many new lights were going in, how many old lights were there. I know you said,
Certainly.
it's obviously
Yes.
very small. It's
Yes.
also working different than every other drawing. So I was like trying to turn my head and trying to figure out, okay, where are we on the site? And
I apologize for that.
yeah,
Certainly we
so if
can
you could
give
just
you
send a
more.
bigger format of that, it'd be
Sure.
very, very helpful. Off the top of your head, how many lights are we adding to the parking lots and to the pathways?
Oh, in the pathways, it's all of the lights. I guess.
Sorry, let me rephrase my question. How many additional lights are we adding?
Oh my goodness, it's quite a lot. Certainly the mews, we're replacing all of them and adding. Lori Beth and Connie might know better on the mews, but the parking lot at lights up. Oh boy, off the top of my head, I want to say we're adding about 10 or 15.
Okay.
but I can,
I'm
I'll send
sorry,
you better
Kathleen, it's
information.
Connie here. Michael, it's Connie Fan from LSG. The point here is in order to control the lights, the cutoff fixtures are arranged such that it would minimize the backspill. And part of the byproduct of adding cutoff lights is you're adding more fixtures and in exchange for better illumination in the usually in when you look at the summary sheet, it's reflected in the ratio. So typically you're looking at 3:1 to 4:1 ratio. In order to eliminate hot spots, that's what they call hot spots when you have in old days when so few lights, whenever you go underneath the light, it becomes a hot spot. And the drawback is when you move from hot spot to hot spot, you're going to go into a situation where it becomes a blind spot because of the super hot versus super light situation. With the improvement over here, you have more pole lights, but much, much better uniformity or, safer environment.
Yeah, understood. I don't have a problem with it. I can't comprehend what it is, like how many we've added, where they're going, just because of the way it graphically is shown to me right now. I can't read any of this. I don't know if it's my eyes or the way it got to me, but I just I can't read it. So
It's
I
a
just like
lot
to
of
know how many lights,
information.
how tall are the lights, how many, what's the Kelvin on the lights, how many lumens is the light, or foot candles, if that's, what you guys have, that's fine as well. I'm just trying to look for that information so we know what we're getting. Right now you guys could be proposing 6,000 Kelvin lights and I would have no clue because I can't read it. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, sure. So
It's fine. It could be printed, Kathleen. Yeah, your lighting designer can print it, and we can supply Michael with quantities right after this meeting.
Absolutely. And the cut sheets are there, so some of that information, if
Yeah, the light fixture selections look great. Like I think they fit in. They'll work with the architecture of the buildings, and so I'm not too worried, about that. But yeah, if you guys could just provide that extra information, that would be helpful.
certainly.
And then the only other question I have, the louver for the PTAC unit is bothering me. It's like the least expensive chicken wire louver you can find. And I just would love if you could get some sort of blade style or something that could be painted the color of the face that it's going to be on. I
We can definitely look into that. We do have an issue with trying to find a unit that will fit into the existing HVAC closet and to the existing system. So this system, we don't have anything on the exterior. There's no rooftop units, there's no little farm of condensers or anything. This is a particular type of unit, and we are targeting a very good efficiency rating, and to kind of find that little unicorn, so to speak, of a unit. We don't have many options. We can definitely take a look at that, and we can look at whether we can recess it or whatnot. But we're kind of working. There's a lot of constraints, and we have fewer options with all of these constraints. And we certainly don't want to go to, as I said, a rooftop unit or a farm of condensers that we would have to put on site. But we'll take another look at it.
Yeah, and I'm just requesting like a decorative louver that's got it still lets the PTAC breathe. It just looks a little bit more similar to honestly what's there now. That would just be painted just to match. I just worry that it's almost going to look more like a through wall unit. And it is going to look like a PTAC without that louver.
Sure.
And so that's the only thing I'm trying to avoid is the aesthetic of that. So just a thought. I know when I did a PTAC project before, we we needed to get a local aluminum guy to make the louvers for us, but you have 230 units, so making economy of scale, you might be able to find somebody who can get a size, get a unit that
Sure.
not a unit, but the actual just louver itself would fit that existing opening. There might be somebody who can make it or something. Just a thought.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
And the final thing that I had was just, I think, and this goes back to Elena, and having these elevations will be helpful. Every entrance to these units are even a little different. Some have archway trim details, some have little I don't know, like it's a thicker trim detail. I don't know if there's a good picture of it. I was on slide.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yes,
Where there's a little
I
bit
do.
different entrances going
Yes.
on to each
Yes.
one. There's like those awnings for the community center, just little things like there's an archway entrance there, just little
Yes.
things like that. I think having the elevations will help communicate some of this differentiation that does exist on the site that currently is just hard to get from the current presentation. Overall, though, I thought the presentation was great. It really gave a lot more information than what we had. Obviously, the last time we did, a couple of us did a site visit, which I think helped a lot. I think the landscaping plan, as much as I hate to say the trees are okay to take out, I think you guys have a plan. You have a reason why. You have a step. You have a plan going forward on how to help mitigate some of the problems on the site, and I think it was documented really well, and presented really well as well. Also, so I think from that side, it's looking positive. I think that's one thing that's up for approval, right? You guys want the landscaping plan approved. You'd like the color elevations, or like I guess the idea that the material is okay to have multiple colors per block, right? Is kind of what you're looking for.
Yes, but again, that's very easy to work with you on, to get it where it needs to be.
And then site lighting, is that also correct? Was one of them for approval as well? You guys were requesting, Mark?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Let me go around. Let's see if we have any other thoughts, comments, and then we'll come back to you guys if we have any other questions. Okay. I'll go quickly just because we're going. So, John, do you have any comments, thoughts?
No additional ones.
Okay, Brian.
No, nothing new.
Bruce.
Nothing else.
Emily.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. Sorry. Few items on the proposed planting plan. I just, again, ongoing maintenance and wanting the project to be successful. Just watch out for your deer resistant species. I noticed things like daylilies, taxus, they're just going to get annihilated, and dead plants don't help with erosion. Also, I am concerned, my biggest concern is the seed mix that has been proposed for the planting plan is a non-native, mostly annual rye blend, and that is just going to take over. And we're not going to see any meadow in this area. The rye is just going to dominate. So I would really like to see some changes to remove just to update the planting plan, to be cognizant of deer resistance, to swap out that seed mixture for something that would be a native meadow mix, and removing. I'm just advised. I love a cherry tree, but cherry trees near walkways, they're going to lead to the same maintenance concerns that we're currently having, because the cherry trees are going to break up the walkway. We're going to have issues in 15, 20 years of it, of the surface fruits of the cherries as close to they are to the current buildings and those walkways, just being another issue. So just look over the planting plan, pay heed to those things. And I definitely would not recommend yucca here. It's just a nightmare to deal with. And again, it's going to cause issues for long-term maintenance and site sustainability. So other than that, those are my only thoughts. Thanks.
Elena?
Nothing more from me. Thank you.
All right. I don't have anything further. So from an approval standpoint, or motion standpoint, does anyone have a motion they'd want to like with some amendments or I'm trying to pull up the exact.
LaShonda, could you go back to the slide that has the list? I think there are 7 or so items that they're seeking approval on, please.
Page 1.
And slide 11. Yeah, right here.
And Michael, I guess if I can make a suggestion in terms of, at least for us, what would be the most useful decision points relative to item 1. Really we're seeking approval on the overall scope and sort of design intent, understanding that considering some of the concerns that Emily has raised, we could certainly go back for formal approval on the planting plan, because where we are in this stage is really design development. So there's a lot of work that really needs to go into the refinement of, specifically the landscape design. But we just wanted to make sure that, the DRB was okay with the approach to, the sediment erosion control, the wattles, the ground cover, removal of trees, and improvements to the accessibility in the site. As far as the approval of the site plan or the site lighting plan, I think we have a little bit more information to provide to you. So, I mean, even if we could get a conditional approval pending some of the additional photometrics and information that we would be providing after this meeting, happy to do so. I guess as for the light fixtures, windows, and dryer cap, if we get an approval of that, a material approval for the hardy plank in item 4, understanding that, and the color blocking, understanding that we would come back before the DRB with some alternatives based on the feedback that we've received tonight. And then the just overall basis of design for the windows, again, same discussion relative to color.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach it, Mark, from an approval standpoint, because did we give an in-concept approval for like the overall site already? Is that
Yes, we did.
that already existed, right? So I'm trying to think. All right, so what I'll do is I'll make a motion and then we can work our way through this kind of line item by line item with amendments. So LaShonda, our staff, I hope you're recording. So I'll make a motion to approve the landscape design with the following amendments: that the planting plan be looked at for the wild meadow seed, and as well as a few other plants that Emily said that I'm sure staff have record of. I motion to approve in concept only the site lighting plan and light fixtures until we have a clear photometric, a clear height of poles, the clear number of additional light poles that are being added, and the color temperature and the lumen package for each light fixture. Because the cut sheets have so many options. So we need to know what all of those things. So I can give it, I'm motioning to do an in-concept approval for that portion. I'm motioning to approve the exterior finish material and color palette 1 with the amendment of that the fascia and the rake boards be all one consistent color per building block. I'm motioning to approve the windows in concept, and that we need a final color selection for those. I'm motioning against the through wall grill at the moment, until we can get a better, more decorative panel that can be painted the same color as the siding. And I'm motioning to approve the dryer cap as submitted.
I'd like to amend that motion to include further study of the use of the color palette to better articulate the elevation and break it up.
So do we want to keep the color as an in concept only then?
Yeah. Yes,
But
please.
overall, the material, the idea of the three colors is fine per block.
Yes.
But we just need some more information on that. So I will accept the amendment to change the approval to in concept for the exterior finishes.
I think the finishes we can approve. It's the color, the use of the color that I'd like to have be in concept so that they don't have to think about finishes too much.
Okay, I accept that. LaShonda, you had a question?
I did have a question about the through wall grill. You said disapprove, or are you going to defer it for further study for a different?
Yeah, we could, correct. Yes, I will amend my motion to defer the through wall grill for further study. All right, so there's some motions, there's been some amendments. Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, is there somebody? No. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? All right. Motion passes 6-0. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
You.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Moving on. 211900 Lake Newport. This is Armstrong Elementary.
Yes, and I have asked the representative Pete to unmute. Pete, you should be unmuted.
I am. Okay. My name is Pete Bloom. I'm with Ford Copeland Mock Architects. And I'm joined by Justin Monongdo, who is the project architect for the project process. I am the project manager and senior associate. This is our first presentation to you, so it's presented at a conceptual level. The school, I'm not sure to the extent you're familiar with it, whether you've been out to the site or not. I'm going to try to skip through some of these slides to show you an overview of a lot of things, and then we can drill down into any detail as you find appropriate. We did try to include, after meeting with LaShonda and Cam, we did try to include as much information as possible about exterior selections for lighting fixtures and wall-mounted fixtures, etc. The project, if you want to go to, LaShonda, if you could just go to page 22. All right, this is an overall site plan. Is there a way for me to draw on this, LaShonda? Do you know?
No, unfortunately not.
So and you can't see my cursor?
No.
Okay. All right. So the site is bound by Lake Newport Drive. You could just do, there you go. Lake Newport Drive on the south and east. And then on the west, the site is bound by Fairfax County Parkway. And to the north is a residential district that abuts the property just to the north of these playing fields. The existing school built approximately around 1994, and then had a subsequent addition built onto it here for what's called a SAC program, which is their extended day program. The current building is 2 stories. In the lower half of the site, there's kind of a main entrance. The building's bifurcated. If you see, there's 2 really re-entrant entrances, one on the facing east and one facing west. And the building wing to the south is double story and is full of mostly classrooms. The building wing to the north is 1 story spaces full of things like the cafeteria, a gymnasium, and the administration suite and some mechanical space. Between the 2, there's this very interesting, approximately 30-foot wide double height space that is a really nice vaulted space that joins the 2 and is kind of a multi-function space for the school. On the east side of the school, off of Newport Road, there is a bus drop-off loop which comes in from the north side of Newport, and it goes right in front of the school currently, and it lets out just to the southeast of the school right now. On the west side of the school, there is currently a driveway and kiss and rides parking space, which is used by parents to drop students off at the rear entrance to the school in the morning and for pickup as well as staff parking back here. In addition to the bus drop off, there's a little staff parking on the north elevation of the park that is used for staff and visitors. And there's a very limited amount of visitor parking on the front bus lane directly in front of the school's main entrance. Currently, there's a high plateau at the north side of the school, which is where we have 2 softball fields and then multiple different soccer fields overlaid with it. Those will remain in place and be upgraded over the course of the 2 softball fields will remain and be upgraded. And then this area will also be used for construction staging. All right, if we go to the next slide, LaShonda. Okay, this shows the proposed additions to the school. The school is currently about 80,000 square feet, and we're proposing 3 additions to the school. 2 on the east side of the school. There is at the southeast corner, there's a 2-story addition to the academic classroom wing, which extends the mass of that building out toward the east. To the north of that, there is a new administration wing, which kind of envelops the existing building front and creates a new main entrance out here facing toward the bus loop. Notably, the bus loop has been moved to the east by about 30 feet in order to accommodate these additions. And the parking has been reconfigured to gain more parking area for buses and visitors in the front of the building. The back of the building here, the north parking behind the school, is not proposed to be changed with the exception of addition of handicap parking spaces at the bottom, what will become a new stair ramp, which will provide ADA access up to the playing fields on the north side of the building. The loading dock, the current existing loading dock, will be upgraded, and we're proposing to enclose it. It is directly off of it's next to the loading spaces you'll see behind the school on the north side. And so we're going to enclose what are 2 exposed dumpsters right now, but leave them in the same place. Currently, also just to the immediate left of those dumpsters, there's currently a large cooling tower, which we are going to be removing and replacing because the school is going to replace all mechanical and electrical systems in the school. So we're getting new mechanical systems, and that cooling tower will go away. To the west of the school, if you pan down a little bit to the sheet south, thank you. What we're proposing is to add in the dark gray, you'll see there's an area here off to the west of the building. This abuts what is currently the gym, which is a blank wall. This is going to be a new library addition, which faces out to the west and north and has beautiful windows out to the north and more shaded windows on the west. And then we extend also a new entrance to the back as well. But significantly, we're expanding the kiss and ride to the north here and making that loop longer to ensure that more cars can be on site at drop off and pickup for the children, and that there's just a lot more safe area to drop them off at and pick up. There's also an expansion of the parking, where previously the existing site has a capacity of 110 parking spaces. The new site would have the capability of having 146 parking spaces for staff and visitors. Off to the south of the site, I want to show you that there's a really handsome knoll. There's a beautiful hill with a pathway that runs through it that will be retained. It's a beautiful wooded forested area. There are some small trees down closer to the south edge of the building, one of which will have to be removed to make room for what is going to be an outdoor classroom, which is a new program element required for Fairfax County Public Schools. And then just to the left of that area, again, abutting the south wing, we will have 2 playgrounds for the youngest children. In the area where we have extended the kiss and ride to the north of the existing kiss and ride, that is currently a playground that's being displaced, and it's going to move to the north, just off the sheet here. It will be replaced, built in kind, just to the left of an existing asphalt play court. Okay, so that, and from a point of view of site, the stormwater management approach for this site, we are having a substantial increase in the impermeable area on the site. And as a result, approximately, I think, an acre of increase in impermeable, because the additions to the building, square footage is approximately set 27,000 square feet. And so the stormwater management facility that's in the front of the school right now is going to need to be expanded. So you see the dotted lines to the east of the building. There are the dotted lines showing the bottom of the swale. That is the stormwater management pond. Correct, right here in this kind of triangular shape between Lake Newport Road and the front of the building. So that's being expanded to the north. And similarly, on the backside of the school, we are going to have additional capacity for stormwater management put underground below the existing parking lot down here in the lower left-hand corner of the site. So that will be all concealed, but it will handle, between those 2 improvements, we will handle all the changes in stormwater that the county requires. At the top of the plan, if we go up to the ball fields again, one of the things that the school district tries to do with these parks is make them useful to the public when the school's not using them. And this park is no exception. It's used quite a bit by the public off hours. And they're doing 2 things. One is they're proposing an asphalt trail around the entire field complex, so that people want to come up here and do loops for walking, that they can do so in an area away from cars. And then significantly, they really want to make sure that this is like handicap accessible. So we're spending a lot of time and effort to make an ADA ramp to joins the 2, because currently there's no ADA accessible connection. Okay, so that, from an overall site point of view, those are kind of the big picture issues. If you would please go to page 44, LaShonda. I can look through some of the landscaping plan. We are in front of the school on the east side, because we are reshaping this kind of triangular wedge in front of the school abutting Lake Newport. We are going to lose some trees, the north end of the existing swale, and then we are replacing them along the bus and visitor parking. So we're going to have a net zero loss in front of the school in terms of trees. And similarly, on the west side of the site at the north kiss and ride addition, There are actually a number of trees which currently occupy the western half of that proposed area. Those are going to be lost, and we're going to recoup as many of them as we can. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 trees there, and we are saving 1 tree that's in the existing parking lot over there. But in order to make this loop turnaround work, we need to lose some trees right here. That said, as I mentioned, there's going to be a tree adjacent to the outdoor playground on the south side of the building, which will be lost. And otherwise, we're looking at planting an additional tree behind the building on the north side, near the loading dock, and near the bottom of the handicap access ramp up to the fields. The play fields, there's currently a fence around them, around the perimeter of the site, and that will remain or be replaced in kind. And the backstops at the 2 softball fields will be replaced, upgraded and replaced. And in front of the school, if you pan down a little bit, LaShonda, just to the east of the new addition for the administration wing, we are proposing foundation plantings for the building along the bus drop-off loop, so that there will be some green area in the zone near the bus drop-off. So immediately abutting the building, and then immediately at the southeast corner of an addition for the classroom, there's also some foundation plantings there. We tried to do trees along here, but the tree trunks were going to be in the way of the pedestrian traffic for the buses too much. So that's the landscape plan as it currently stands. We do have a photometric plan if you want to look at page 46.
Pete, before you move on real quick, could you talk on these temporary trailers that you guys are proposing up in the ball fields?
Sure. There are going to be 2 or 3 things done up in these fields while the school is being done. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Fairfax schools. I think that they did a renovation of a school in Reston in the past half dozen years or so. But what happens is that they want to keep the school open during construction. So the construction duration will be approximately 2 years. And during that 2 years, the only place on this site that was suitable for flat area for replacement classrooms was up here on these softball fields. So what'll happen is the school district designs and provides temporary trailers for students whose classrooms will be closed for a given phase of design. There's a complex phasing that's designed for the building, and at each phase, a different number of students in different grades are displaced. This figure shows the most classrooms, temporary classrooms, that they envision for the worst case phase. There's also a temporary playground that's going to be built up there, as the playground will not be accessible. And they're also going to have temporary bathroom facilities up there for students as well. These are all only going to be here for the duration of construction. And then after the last fall, when the project's complete, these will be taken down, and these fields will be restored and the improvements made. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I hope that, I know this went out to neighbors, and I'm sure we'll get to affected parties, but that's getting really close to the residential area that abuts the back of this. So I don't know if they're aware that they're gonna, have classroom trailers in the back there now, but we'll work with it. I guess the only thing I would say is, are you guys gonna put in the ADA site improvements to get up there prior to that?
We have to for the students to be able to access this. That's one of the first things we have to do. The first time we get access to the site is we put in those improvements to connect for the students.
Okay. Yeah. And I honestly, I don't know if you've ever, I personally, just my time on the DRB, I don't know if I've ever approved a temporary trailer before, but I'm assuming the trailer design would need to go through us for I mean, if they're going to be there for a 2-year duration.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll need to engage our client. Fairfax County Public Schools designs their own trailers. So we'll have to get information from them to share with you for this so we can go forward with that.
Okay.
Similarly, with playground, when we get to that, the current playgrounds are going to be replaced. Fairfax County does their own playground design. So we have some examples in this presentation we can show you. We don't have that for the temporaries. So we'll make a point of getting that information for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. And I think if we can go, I think the next thing I'd like to do, I'd really like to kind of dive into some of the existing conditions. If you go to page 49, please, LaShonda. Okay. In the upper right-hand corner, you see the overall site plan that we've just kind of reviewed with more labels on it. If we could, LaShonda, start in the upper left-hand corner of this sheet with this west view, we have aerial views of the building from all 4 sides, and kind of wanted to review with you the starting point for this project. The building was built in an era which probably valued large expanses of unfinished wall more than we do. And the plan of the classrooms were in a diagonal fashion such that you had diagonal partitions at these chamfered corners so that you could literally get one classroom, one window into each classroom. So you'd get 2 windows on the end of each of these chamfers, and then you really didn't have to have windows in the rest of the building. So there's really remarkably few windows in this building. As you'll see over here, this mass on the left, this is the existing gym. And though it's completely open to the west elevation, they chose not to put windows in that. Sean, if we could just pan down to the next view. This is the north view. This shows you in the foreground, there's a loading dock with 2 garbage dumpsters you see, which are not enclosed, which we propose to enclose. Again, you see this kind of chamfered mentality, this idiom, and there's very few windows. This is a loading dock area. This is the back of a cafeteria. This is the back of mechanical room, and this is the back of the gym. And there's virtually no windows on this entire elevation. And you'll see over here, to the right-hand side of the classroom wing, there's almost no windows into classrooms at the extreme west end of the classroom wing. So one of the interesting things about the building is that it has this gabled roof section in the middle, which joins the 2-story section to the 1-story section. And that's where that beautiful vaulted space goes through the middle of the project. And we propose to pick up and extend that vaulted space and make that kind of the backbone of the project while including more windows in the project. If you could pan down to the next view, please, LaShonda. All right, this is the east view. This is actually the front entrance view. And you can see that the east entrance is labeled here. And to really, if you look at it, there's the text on the roof plan says Armstrong Elementary School. And at that point, that's actually where the building occupant, or that's where visitors can actually enter the building. Everything in front of that is a covered canopy that's very dark, sticks out from the building, but it's not conditioned space. This is all unconditioned space that's just covered in dark. The cafeteria is just off to the right. The student extended daycare is over here. And again, you see the classroom wing on the left with this vaulted space spanning the 2. And you can see how currently there's an enormous amount of paving in front of the school with very little landscape. These trees are fantastic. Unfortunately, the proposal is to replace them in this area, to replace them with an administration wing. And that's why we're going to replace those trees in this area on the east side of the new bus loop. And if you could pan down to the final existing view, this is from the south. This is overlooking that beautiful knoll that overlooks the building. It sometimes casts shadow on this side of the building, but it sometimes elevation of the building is in complete sun. And you can see how few windows there are again on these classrooms. And then the central area of the building, this was a library, which we proposed converting to 2 art rooms. And this area currently has shingle roofs, and we're proposing to go to a standing seam metal roof in this area, whereas the rest of the roofs would really just go to they'll be replaced with a new built-up roof system on the flat roofs, with the exception of canopies, which can be a TPO membrane roof. Okay, and then if you can, Lashana, please pan to the right, and we can just look at the photographs of the existing building. Okay, the existing bus loop, you can see this is the approach shot as you pull off of Lake Newport Road. You can see that there's just large areas of wall which are undifferentiated, and then there's this large kind of cornice-like feature that contrasts with it in color and is actually it's stucco and in parts it's precast, and that's a feature that we're also trying to downplay as we move into the renovation. And then you'll see on the lower left-hand image, and here's the existing west entrance down here where it says number 4. This is the west entrance, which you see also is a very recessive entrance. It's a good 30 feet back from the edge of the building, and it's also in dark shadow most of the time. We're trying to improve this true by bringing it further to the west, where it will be more visible and will not be screened by so much of the building. Okay, and if you just go to sheet 53, Shauna. All right. The existing building, as you can see, is a brick building. And if you look at the left-hand column for the materials here, you'll see that the existing brick is the second brick down on this column. And it's a quite dark to tan brick, and we are going to be salvaging that for reuse and repair where we are creating new openings or fixing existing openings. And for the large parts of the addition, we've not been able to find an exact match. And in fact, the school district has asked us not to try to get an exact match. They want us to acknowledge the differences in the two. So we've picked this building up here for the base brick for the additions. And then at some of the windows, you'll see that the headers are called out with an accent brick. And so down here where the pink accent brick is labeled under the Belden 8533 velour, so it says proposed, that would be used for a header over many of the new windows at the academic building. Other materials in the palette include metal panels. In this case, this first vertical row, we're looking at options for the metal panels. We are trying to minimize the impact of the cornice element and wrapping it and flattening it in a metal panel that we're going to try to match the color of the existing brick. I know that the color rendition doesn't come off very well on this image, but the actual lava rock color is actually not far from the existing brick color. Secondarily, we're also looking at using some metal panel to call out the administration suite in the front of the building and to accent some of a special piece on the library wing. So it'd be on the front and back of the building in small quantities. And then we have one place over the main entrance where we're looking at having some metal panel accents, and we're really looking at this top color granite as that accent color, and it would be on this gray field of sandstone that is the metal panel one for the admin. When it comes to materials for windows and storefront, our basis of design, which we may or may not get, as was hinted at in the earlier presentation, our basis of design is Conair, and it's a Conair anodized finish. And so we're selecting that for both the windows and the doors. And then within that system, especially within the windows, there's an operable unit, a hopper in each of the classroom windows. And so we're using those hopper units as different colors to mark which types of classrooms are behind them. So the exterior elevations reflect the breakdown of different pods that the students are broken down into. Below that, there are two places where we're looking at an accent glass. Actually, on the administration wing, there's some generous glazing facing the bus drop-off. Some of it, unfortunately, is in front of program that we really don't want to show. So we're looking at using some blue spandrel panel to relate to the blue accent metal panel. And this color's still up in the air, to be quite honest here. We've really not honed in on that. Getting to the materiality of the roofs, again, the FCPS has a standard built-up roof system that they prefer, which will really have a dark finish. The standing seam metal roof on the gabled parts of the roof, we're suggesting this gray color. And then below that, there's a type 3, which is a TPO roof, which they like to use the thin membrane roofs of the canopy so that the canopy assemblies don't get too deep. So we're trying to do that. And if you go to the next page, please, LaShonda. This is a diagram of what materials go where for the different elevations. The top elevation you see on the screen right now, these green, this is the one elevation which will be all new materials. Basically, everything you see in this view is going to be new, and things that you see like this triangle, those are things off in the distance that you won't be able to see. So the proposed brick will be that brown brick that doesn't quite match the existing. This purple here calls out areas of metal panel that correspond to this area. Correct. Is an administration wing. And then to the left of that, you can see there's a double height space that is a new main entrance. It's between the academic wing and the administration wing. Okay. To the left of that is a 2-story classroom wing that will be detailed with brick with those accented headers as well. And you can see we're trying to really introduce a lot more fenestration in the building to break down the scale of the building and to break down some of those blank masses. The image in the lower left, as you see it on this image, the right-hand side of this image is in green, is a new addition. The green is the brick, which is a base for a large glazed volume, which is the library, which has a roof form that kind of slopes slightly and collects the water and projects off to the west and north. And then just to the right of that image, you can see where you see the green surrounding a glazed area with glazing above it. This again looks into the library and it's facing west now. And the mullions on the west face at this lower window actually project out from the face a little bit to try to screen some of the sun on the west elevation. Immediately to the right of that brick is some purple metal, the metal panel again, which would be that kind of gray sandstone. And this is a special component of the library that we're calling out here. Just to the right of that, where this cut line is actually the rear entrance, which we are trying to develop. And then you'll see on the right-hand side, just to the right, you see there's really one place where it's very prominent, where on the left-hand side, where the orangish brick is called out, that's the existing brick color. The pink at the top of that is the new metal panel color, hoping to match the brick color. And then to the right of that is what's a new addition, where we're trying not to extend that cornice element. We're trying to cut it short. And then picking up on the rhythm of the windows again, extending that rhythm to the new addition, and again, accenting the headers of those windows. And So this is a diagram that tries to explain to you where we're using what materials. It's not intended to be representative of the actual proposed colors. Okay. And if you can, I think it would be best if we could go to elevate or sheet 62. All right, sheet 62. This shows all of the building elevations, including with some small cuts lines. The top one is the north elevation that you see. There's an existing loading dock shown in the middle of the image. There is an image to the left of the hand where the hand is currently now. Everything to the left of that hand was new addition, both the administration wing and classroom wing. And then if you look to the right hand end of the sheet, you'll see again that large library addition abutting what is effectively the gymnasium now. The elevation immediately below that is the south elevation. This is the one that faces out toward that knoll. You can see that we've taken an elevation that had as few as 4 windows on each side. We've been able to reintroduce far more windows, which are good for the classrooms and for the breakdown of the scale of the building, we think. And this is one of the places where if you zoom in, you'll really start to see the color of the hoppers starts to change according to the groups. Okay, and this is the west elevation right here. Again, in the middle here, this is the east facing entrance elevation. And you can see we're showing some of the blue accent glass and some of the light blue accent metal panel, as well as the light gray metal panel surrounding the administration wing. And the base of the building is going to remain brick up to about windowsill height so that we can maintain durability in these high traffic areas. And then we'll transition to metal panel as we're able. And then if you pan down just a little bit, this bottom elevation is the full west elevation. You can see both the gabled roof of the vaulted space beyond, and you can see all the way to the new east entrance, the double height eastern entrance in the distance at the end of this long 30-foot wide main street. The image at the very bottom of the sheet is a section through the long main street of the building looking toward the south, which shows the upper story of the second floor of classrooms. Again, introducing the same kind of fenestration into that area. Okay. And if you would please go to sheets 55. All right. This sheet begins to show you some of the details of the elevations. The section cut right here on the right-hand side where it says Armstrong, it shows you what the buildup would be for the administration offices. And we are proposing new signage for the school in large stainless steel letters or aluminum letters to announce the school's presence. To the left of that image, you'll see a double height space, which is fronted by a canopy that we need for covering the children during bus loading and unloading. And then we've kind of tried to make a really an attractive feature out of this was in place of that reentrant entry that was so far back and dark. We've tried to pull it out to the facade and add this canopy in front of it to make it, for 2 reasons. 1, to make it better, but 2, to make it more prominent in the rear entrance, which previously it had been virtually equal in plan, and it created some confusion as to which was the front entrance. Next sheet, please. The image at the lower left shows a detail of what we're thinking for library development. This shows a section through the brick that surrounds that window where the storefront projects out and screens some of the window. And then we have an overhang, the clear story on that window elevation. And then to the right, you see really the small library section where they have some collections in there, accented with the hoppers being different color, and again, the metal panel being a different color as well. And then the next sheet, please. All right, and this is an excerpt from the south-facing elevation, and this blow up on the left-hand side. This shows that the one place where we transition directly from the existing brickwork building to the new addition, and we're doing it quite abruptly. We don't, as we said, we're not trying to match the brick exactly. We're trying to have something that is compatible with it. And then you can see the articulation of the headers over the windows. You can see in this image better the color of the hoppers being different on different parts of different floors, depending on the classroom configuration above. And this also begins to show you that we have sunshades on the south elevation because currently, in order to reduce our cooling loads, we really needed something on the south facing elevations. So we have, this is a Conair product. Should we get Conair, that would go across this horizontal up here above the hoppers. And that would be on all the south facing windows to help with the both development of facade, but also the minimizing the heat gain. Okay, and then if you just go to 58. These are some sample photos. In the upper left-hand corner, there's the image of the sunshade, and then there's an image of something like it. The photograph shows something that's more tapered. We don't think we'll be able to get the tapered profile, but depending on the manufacturer that finally gets it, it may not be a rectangular profile. But we show this is the anodized look. Just below that, you can see that the anodized Conair storefront entrances look something like this in the red box. And this is what we were proposing at all the main entrances. So both at the main entrance on the east and then the secondary entrance on the west. Those are the kind of materials we're thinking about. And if you pan to the right, this is just kind of what one of these aluminum framed windows with the Conair anodized aluminum could look like. Our sills will not be precast. We can't afford that, unfortunately. And then if you pan up, this shows kind of a closer detail of what a window with the sunshade would look like with hoppers, except that we're proposing to color some of these hoppers. Okay. And then if you can go to the next view, 59. This is actually a view that you would see after the project's completed and the trees begin to mature in front of the building. You would see the visitor parking has been expanded over here, and we've replaced the trees in the foreground. And then we have foundation plantings along the building. We have a canopy at the front entrance to cover the children when they change or arrive at school and leave. And then you see the foundation plantings again around here, trying to take the edge off some of this paved area out here. So this is the administration suite going to the new main entrance, and this is the classroom suite. The next slide, please. This is an image taken from the northwest, looking back towards the proposed library. This shows you a better image of what the existing cornice treatment off to the left we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get a cornice that is closer in color to the existing brick, and simplifying that cornice so that it doesn't have the stepping profile. And then you can see that the brick we've chosen is slightly different in color and wraps around the building. And we have this dramatic wall of windows. And then we have this accent window that has some of the deeper mullion covers that allow for some of the shading. And then again, there's this, just to the right of that, there's this special pop out in the library. And just to the right of that, you can see we've taken the same language from the front entrance canopy and we've included a smaller version of it in the back canopy, again, to cover the students, but also in deference to the front canopy, it's smaller. And you can see beyond how we've, again, tried to minimize that cornice by matching the metals to the rest of the building color. And
I think that's a good spot, Pete, where I can go around
sure.
and we can
Sure.
ask the questions, and then we can. You guys are looking for in concept approval for right now.
Correct. We
final details down the road.
We did
Very thorough
include
package, so
we did include additional details, but we don't want to put the cart before the horse.
yeah, I think just with our process, with what we need is we need to technically do a in concept, and then it'll then go for a final approval kind of road.
Sure.
But let me go around the room. Let me see if
Wait.
anyone has any questions for you.
Excuse
Very,
me.
very,
Mark,
yeah, LaShonda.
we do have APs.
Oh, perfect. So then she's actually correcting me. I need to go to APs first, and then we'll go around the room. So let me, LaShonda, if you could go through the APs. I'm going to remind, if you are an affected party, you have 3 minutes to state your affected party status and kind of why you're just any thoughts, whatever you're wanting to talk about. And if you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes, and staff is monitoring that time. So LaShonda, please take it away.
All right, so first we have Ed Shanahan. I'm asking you to unmute now. One moment.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a question. I tried to look it up in county documents, couldn't find anything. I tried to Google it, couldn't find anything. It's on the architectural diagrams. Just don't know what it means. It's something called 25-foot type 1 transitional screening. We live behind the school, by the way. So it's something that's on the document that is at the back of the school. I don't know which page this is off, but one of the early pages in the big deck.
Okay, let's see if we can get to that sheet so we can look at it more closely.
So it's
it's
the
going to be in
border
the
between
PRC.
the school and the homeowners.
It's going to be the PRC.
Hold on, Pete. Just from a clarification,
sorry.
let me have Ed finish your statement. What we'll do is
Okay.
I'll take note of it, and then we'll try to get it answered. We just
Sure.
just with our process, we
Okay.
can't answer it right now, but we'll make
Sure.
sure to answer that screening question that you have in the
Okay.
rear. And you're talking about the ball field side of things.
Yeah, and it's on slide 44. One of my neighbors just texted it in.
Okay.
It's something we're not architects, so we don't really know how to read these things. So
Great. Yeah. So we'll note that, and then we'll address it once we go through all the affected parties. Okay.
okay. And I think the other thing that's related to it, are there any plans to remove any of the trees that are along the north side, like in between the school and the homes? Or is all that vegetation going to stay the way it is today?
Okay. Great. I'll mark that down as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Next, we have Fran Jonesy, or maybe this is Greg. This is Fran? Asking you to unmute.
Yeah, Fran and Gary Jonesy were also residents in the Turtle Rock Lane area. And I just want a similar concern to what Ed Shanahan was raising. I think we would just like to expand it to not just the north end, but also the east end, where there's currently that stand of trees and vegetation, which is a buffer between the school and the neighborhood. So we looking at the plans, it looked like there wasn't going to be any disturbance there. So you can clarify whether all that's going to stay or not.
And specifically, your mention of introducing the track, the asphalt ring around the current fields. I guess I was interested in finding out more about the dimensions of that. And because right now there are existing chain link fences, which you said would remain, but it sounds like you would be needing to cut into existing trees. So we wanted to note our objection to anything like that.
And I think that's it from us.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next, Jennifer and John Cochran.
Hi, thank you. Jennifer Cochran here with my husband. We are affected parties in that our property touches Armstrong property. So our backyard backs up to the school. We'd like to echo what Ed Shanahan and Gary and Fran Jonasy said. We'd like more detail and information about the track. Specifically, we'd like information about any of the trees that need to be removed to either accommodate this asphalt track or the additional fields that are being added. The trees and the forest that's there right now serves as home to a lot of wildlife, but also it serves as a buffer to noise from Fairfax County Parkway. So we would just like more information on that, please.
Thank you. Next, it will be Ryan and Gina Crace. I was not able to identify them beforehand. If Mr. or Mrs. Crace is present, could you please raise your hand?
I've unmuted that effectively.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I'm not sure if you can see me or not. I'm going to jump in with the same thing that all my neighbors before me have brought up, right? That 25-foot screening, which is brought up several places in the plan. If that takes down trees, I have a concern with it. If it doesn't take down trees, uses those or adds some additional pieces to it, that's fine. Page 37 on the package we were presented with had a stormwater line going across the backside of my property. I'm not sure if that's actually a line or if that's just showing a division in drainage. My background's electrical, not architectural, landscaping, or anything. If that involves any sort of excavation or flood risk or anything for my property, I'd obviously want more information. And then the last bit in here, kind of one of the goals of the project was mentioned as increasing some of the parking, a little more capacity there. Coming into Fairfax County Parkway onto Lake Newport or vice versa around the time school dismisses can be a bit of a hazard at the moment. Like information, if there's been any study as to whether or not the additional parking should mitigate that if student capacity hits full capacity there. Also, I'd like to touch on Mr. Wood's comment on the temporary buildings. I've got no issue with that as long as they go away at the end. Whatever those look like. Construction is not going to be fun, but we could put up with it for a bit. And I love the additional windows and whatnot, kind of getting rid of the data center look, getting something a little more modern and open.
Thank you. Next we have Jack and Sandy Matney. I do see them here. If you are calling in from a landline, could you press *6 to unmute yourself? I don't have the ability to unmute you. We can come back to
Mr. Jack and Sandy.
Yes.
I've asked them to unmute.
Okay.
Please speak up once you've been unmuted. You should have received a prompt from us. It looks like that affected party has dropped off the call.
All right. And then the last one is Ingrid Freeman. Ms. Freeman, if you are on the call, could you please raise your hand? Yeah, have no hands raised. That would be the last affected party for this application.
Okay, great. We could go, if you could unmute Pete real quick. I want to jump on these questions about the screening, and I think I know the answers, but I want him to kind of speak on it as well.
Yeah. No,
So
I think. Go
can
ahead.
you just address that existing tree area that's next to the field up, and kind of what impact you guys are having, if any?
Yeah, sure. The intent is to have no or little impact on the north side. And let me see, there is a sheet, the tree preservation plan on page 25. If you can get to that, LaShonda. Well, no, that's not showing the north side though. Can you show page 42, page 42 tree
On the next
removals?
page, page 26 has the north side up above the
Okay.
ball field.
Okay. All right. If you can zoom in on these circles. All right. All right. The existing 10-foot chain link fence to be reused for tree protection. That would probably be temporary during construction reuse, as opposed to permanent. And can you zoom out of this image for a second? And LaShonda, I want to see the graphic for removed trees. I think in the upper right-hand corner, there's a graphic. All right, tree to be saved, tree to be removed. Can you zoom in just so the graphic is clear? Okay, so tree to be saved are gray. All right, so if we could just pan back out to where those trees are on the north side. So effectively, there is, I think, a tree being shown removed where this arcing path on the east side straightens out and goes northward. There is a dotted circle where a tree is proposed to be removed. So there's one tree that's being proposed to be removed. The other gray trees were close enough that they had to do the analysis, but they're proposing to keep all of those trees. So from this drawing, we're proposing to keep the trees that abut this, with the exception of, if you see, there's one tree, and again, I can't mark this up. If you see that one tree.
And Pete, I don't think that's actually a tree being removed. If you zoom in on it, it's not dotted like other ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with the resolution, it looked like it was.
My understanding, it doesn't look like anything is being.
Yeah. So it looks like it's a shrub or something that's going to stay. But the intent isn't to take out any trees on the north. The north is where we want to do very low impact. The path, to speak to everyone's question about the path is really going to be 4 feet, and it's intended for people, I guess, can jog on it, but it's not really wide enough to be a track per se. It's really going to be a path, and the school uses it for walking, and they use it for their PE, but then neighbors can use it for, obviously, after hours for walking as well. But it's really 4 feet wide, and it's asphalt on grade. The intention is not to have to change any grading so that we're not cutting into any slopes, so we're not taking out any trees.
And then they had the question about the type 1 transitional screening that's just marked there.
You know, I actually need to talk to my civil engineer about that. My civil engineer is doing both the civil engineering and the landscape. I don't know what that note's about. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm not aware personally of any 25-foot high fences, so I'm not quite sure what that note refers to. But
Yeah, my past that the understanding of that is that they're just noting that that's where, if screening was needed, would be, need to be planted essentially. But you guys already have, it's already a forested area, so that's my understanding of what the transitional screening is. But I think it's already a forested area, so therefore it's not going to be, touched.
It is. If you go to the existing vegetation plan, you can see that it's shown as a forested area. The existing vegetation plan is page 24.
And if you go to slide like 28, Ken, it kind of shows another small section of that 25-foot of transitional screening that's required. And I think it's strictly because basically those are all the property lines that are abutting residential. They just require this 25-foot of transitional screening, which is a mixture of plantings required by the county. So they're adding, a bunch of evergreen shrubs, hollies, to fill in part of the screening that does not exist now today. Is what my understanding is. But if you guys could, clarify that for the
Yeah,
that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the only thing they asked was on like the east part of the site, was there going to be any tree removal? And I think it's kind of from the same diagram that
there is going to
tree
be
removal is along that kind of that pond area, right?
Yes, there is tree removal. If you look at I believe page
25.
Tree removal 42, page 42 shows tree removal. And if you zoom in on that area in front of the east, I think, isn't it? This is tree removal exhibit. So it should be. I think in this area, like tree 3143, 3134, 3137, 3133, 3132. I think at the north end of this stormwater management area, we're losing 4 or 5 trees. And at the south end, we are losing 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 trees. But in the end, we're planting back. I believe if you go to the planting plan, I believe we're going to have 12 out there in the future on the landscape plan, page 44. Okay, yeah. So you'll have one new. These are all shown as new trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There'll be 12 trees out here. And we're taking out, I'm not sure if we're taking out exactly 12 or less. And back here, we're putting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new trees. And these are just 2 trees back here in the fields area. But so this area is being modified because we need this area. It's a low point on site, and it's one of the places we can treat water on site. So this stormwater management area, the volume had to increase, and the way to do it was to go north. Was the most efficient way to do it. So we want to reestablish this kind of buffer of trees as these grow in, so that you'll maintain the current buffer right here at the north end, and you'll build upon that. Similarly, at the entrance to the Kiss and Ride on the west side of the school, we're trying to plant new trees there to help to start to screen that entrance to that parking lot. Was there anything else that they had?
No, and one thing I do want to clarify, because this exhibit was a little better. Slide 42, staff. There are 2 trees. You were right, Pete, originally.
Okay.
2 trees, 3116 and 3117 that appear to be very small. Scroll up, staff, to where the ball fields are. Those 2 trees that are right along the chain link fence existing will be impacted by
3116 and 3117. Can we go over to this chart on the left and look up those trees? And I can tell you what they are. The trees are all numbered uniquely. 31116.
That's 2 hickories.
Yes, these are hickories. I'm not sure. It's just caliper.
Just 6 and 7 inches.
6 and 7 inch caliper.
The relatively.
So there, yes. So yes, there's 2 trees, and that one corner that would need to go away on the north side.
Okay, great. Well, now let me go around the room and see if anyone has any questions, and then we'll get moving.
Hey, Michael, can I stop for just a second?
Yep.
There was one affected party who asked about, I think it's an important distinction to make. It looked like a storm line or something was coming through their property.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I want us to make sure we
Can-
clarify that that's not what that is.
Can that gentleman,
I think it was on slide 37, might be a helpful one to
37?
go to.
I'm pretty sure it's existing. It's already there. I think that's catching all the.
I'm not quite sure what, I mean, I will say this much. I do know that we're not proposing doing anything off-site. So,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure
I think it's a graphic thing, but I'd like to see it, and so we can explain this to this gentleman.
Yeah, slide 37, Steph. If you zoom in on that top right corner, there's an existing 18-inch sewer line coming out of a riprap swale that I'm pretty sure is collecting all the water.
It's
coming
getting
off their
stormwater.
backyards.
Yeah, right. We are not proposing changing any of that. While it's within our property, we're not proposing modifications to that. Because quite frankly, we're not doing any work in this area. So there's going to be no increase in collected stormwater over here. So there's no reason to change those lines. So no, the line right, I can't really know what is it, 18-inch RCP, will not be changed or modified. Yes.
Thank you, Brian, for reminding me. All right, now let's go around the room and see if anyone has any questions. John, did you have any questions?
No, only I've been in the business long enough to observe how windows come and go in public schools. So
as do closed classrooms.
Yeah. Yep. It looks good to me.
Thank you very much.
Brian, did you have any questions?
Yeah, one minor question to start. Lashonda, can you go to slide 53? It's just about the material palette, and I guess specifically the column on the left on the brick finish. You know, we've got the existing brick, a new brick, and then there's the brick accent, which I'm trying to understand. Are you trying to match the new brick or
no
contrast, or what's the intent there with the accent?
We're trying to contrast. This again, the color rendition on these brick samples is not great, so I apologize for that. But no, the intent is that the accent bricks are just being used at the headers, and we do want them to contrast. They will be recessed a half an inch, and we want them to contrast with the new brick. So that's the intent. And neither of them neither of them matches the existing brick exactly.
Okay, so and of course I can go look up this brick, but I guess the true color of this brick is a little bit darker than it's reading. Is that correct?
I think the existing brick that we're asking to have salvaged is actually a little bit lighter than it's showing here.
Okay.
If you look at some of the existing photographs,
So,
it's closer to tan.
Yeah, right. It does look a little dark in that photo. I guess I want to talk about or ask about the entry a little bit. So I think that was 55 or 56 where there were a couple blow-ups of the entry.
It should be 55.
Yeah,
56,
perfect. So I definitely appreciate your points about really enhancing the entrance, because you're right. The one now, I couldn't find it when I was there and things like that. I'm not sure I understand some of the color choices going on here at the entry. Specifically, in that image on the bottom left, these two kind of vertical sort of blue strips. That and the combination of the blue spandrel we're seeing over kind of on the admin. I'm not sure I'm understanding where that comes from yet. Could you talk about that just a little bit?
It really draws from the inside of the school. Currently, the school has a lot of imagery dedicated to space, being named after Neil Armstrong, and there's a lot of murals painted inside the school that we can't preserve, but they wanted us to pick up on some of that palette. So that's why we're trying to find a place for some of these blues. Are these the right blues? Are these being used the right way? We're completely open to investigating that. Is this the wrong color? Is this the wrong color direction? We're open to reconsidering that as well. But that was the genesis of it, is that it came from the inside of the school.
Interesting. Okay. That's good to know. I'm just not sure that, especially on the bottom left, I'm just not sure if it's really making a lot of sense yet. I mean, your explanation helps a lot, by the way. Thank you. But I guess just as approaching the school and seeing it, I'm just not sure that it's making sense with the overall scheme yet. So I just wonder if that
is it that those two legs come down below the canopy and aren't really physically connected to the rest of it?
I agree. They're not really lined up with anything. I just don't understand them at all, to be honest with you. I don't understand the color of them. I don't understand kind of what they're doing. So I just maybe want to, since it's the new entry and it's going to be, obviously it's a focal point. I wanted to maybe just hopefully make a little more sense. And I think that the rendering on 59 shows it as well. It just kind of stands out so strongly to me. And I'm just yeah, I mean, it just
does. Yep.
I'm not sure I understand it yet.
Okay.
So I just maybe would ask that that you look at that a little bit, because I think that the canopy makes sense, and kind of projecting the entry and things like that makes sense. And I think this volume that you've created that's taller, it looks to be a different color. Like, maybe that's enough. I don't know if it needs sort of this added color, but I mean, of course, that's just up to you. It's just a question. It's just something that pops out to me as a question. I'm just not sure I understand on the overall scheme yet.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I think we can definitely look into that. That's a good point. Thank you.
And I think my last comment still has to do with some of these like, kind of feature accent colors that you're bringing in, the blue spandrel, and then how you're differentiating some of the hopper windows as you move around the building. I'm just not sure. I mean, in my opinion, I'm just not sure it's doing very much for you yet. Um, I, I don't know if they're just too different, if there needs to be more consistency, or if there's just something that'll help tie it in just a little bit better to the school, because right now I'm just not understanding the logic of it. And I don't know if I would, just being kind of a visitor to school or driving by or something like that. So I just maybe want to ask to look at those a little bit more. And see
Yeah.
if those could be kind of refined.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's not working. I mean, I will say that the starting point was really trying to have it relate to programmatic elements in terms of which classes are where. So if that's not legible, and I don't think many people would make that connection, we can reconsider that. Do you think the accent color is a good thing? We just haven't got it right? Or do you think we should kind of stick with the anodized?
I think in general, my opinion is just to stick with the anodized. However, I will say I like the idea of bringing in a strong contrast at some of these key moments, like at the front and at the library. I like that. But maybe it just needs to be more consistent, or kind of cohesive together around the building,
Okay.
as opposed to it's kind of this light blue at the entry, then it's this really strong blue at the admin, then it's red, then it's blue again on the library. So I don't know, like I do like the injection of a little bit of color, but I just think if it could be a little more kind of cohesive together, I think that might help.
Okay. We'll definitely look at that. Thank you.
That's it for me, Michael.
Thanks, Brian.
And
Bruce?
Michael,
Oh,
would
yeah,
you,
Lena.
would you mind if I went? Because otherwise we're going to have to jump back to Brian.
Go for it.
Because he was noticing the same thing I was. So I think it might be expedient just to have me go. So I like the accent color. I like breaking up the kind of the beige tones. I totally agree with Brian that the school name and the bright color under there is popping more to me than the entry. And I'm not sure if them being the same color would help or what, but it's just, I think you need to make the entry stronger. But I would say that I like the accent color. I wouldn't want to go all anodized.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents. And those were my only comments. So
Okay.
thanks for letting me go, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lana. Bruce.
Nothing additional from me.
Okay. Emily.
I hope to keep this brief. First, and I think I know the answer, there is a line item and it's on most of the planting plan. I think we're on page 42. It just says reforestation area. I don't know if that's existing or proposed. It looks like it's outside of the limits of disturbance, so I'm just kind of confused.
You took it in the upper right-hand corner, the
Yeah.
northeast. Yeah, that is actually, I think that was previously designated by the school system somehow. And that you can see that it's actually in a different state of growth. If you look at the vegetation plan, it's not a mature forest, whereas the rest of the area around it is mature forest. So I think it's been planted recently, relatively recently, and it's still growing in.
Not a problem. I figured that was the case, just maybe again for clarification, put existing on the plans going forward. And then my only remark is kind of on the west side of the property where we're putting that turnaround loop.
Mhm.
It looks like that's going to be the area where we're taking out the majority of the trees, at least because of grading, more or less. And I just wonder if there's anything that we can do, particularly for tree. I know it seems silly to try and save one tree, but it's kind of my job. But tree 3073 is right on the limits of construction. And if we simply put in some form of retaining wall rather than actually tapering off the grade there, I think we'd be able to have, a large mature tree saved in that, on that side near the parking area. I don't know if that's a feasibility, but that's definitely something that I'd like to see considered if we can.
I don't know how big its canopy and root ball are. I think I'll have to look at that with our landscape and civil team and see.
Yep.
Just
It
how
looks like
how
it
big that
could
is.
be salvaged. Just taking a cursory look at the plans, if we were to do a retaining wall instead of grading. And then I guess my only other remark is, going forward, wanting to see some more details about what the site's going to look like when the additions are done, in terms of a landscaping and lighting plan. More detail on those would be good going forward. But that's all that I had.
Okay, we do have a photometric plan if you want to look at it. I think it suffers from some of the challenges that the other photometric plan you saw earlier tonight did, but we can have a plan developed that clearly shows the new lighting positions.
Like, are you guys proposing any additional additional pole lights or anything there's no, like, you're not lighting the fields up, you're not doing any
No, the field's not at all. No, the field's not at all. There are adjacent to the vehicle travel lanes, there are some new lampposts. And we do have in this package, there is some information on that. It might not be complete at this point, but we can come back with a stronger lighting plan and clarify the fixtures picked for that.
Okay. I think that's everybody except me. The only couple things I had a question on were with introducing the new HVAC on the roofs. In the elevations, they're very prominent. With the rooftop units, you got a VRF system up there. I know, like Lake Ann Elementary, we have screening on. Have you guys looked at doing any sort of metal blade louver system for these, and or done any sort of eye line study? I mean, we're a little unique because we're 2 stories. Lake Ann's only 1. Have you guys looked at that?
We have looked at the studies from the front of the school. If you look at driving up from the Lake Braddock or from the Lake Newport Road toward the administration wing is higher than it needs to be so that it can screen some mechanical. We've put one piece of mechanical directly behind it where it will be screened, and then there's another piece that's going over the cafeteria, which is also screened by it. Where we haven't studied the screening from the north,
Well, there you're going to lose. That's probably why you haven't.
Well, right.
Because you're probably at the same elevation as the second floor up there.
Correct. And then at the south hand side, that knoll is densely wooded, and it's really going to screen us quite well. But from the east side of the school, that's one of the reasons the administration volume is higher than everything, so that it can screen. There's a mechanical unit directly behind the administration unit, and there's a mechanical unit directly over the cafeteria. It's as far back as we can get it in the cafeterias, so that it's not visible as you drive up.
So maybe it'd be beneficial to look at, there's not a ton. I'm looking at the south elevation, or sorry, the north elevation. This makes it look like there's a lot of rooftop equipment up there that you're going to be able to see. That would be my only, to investigate a little bit of louvers potentially, if you guys do a study and it's warranted. I think it could be beneficial, just especially since now, those fields are used, like you said, by the school, but then they're going to be used by the public. I know myself, I've been up on those fields multiple times. They do, Reston Soccer uses them for the little kids program. And so now that cooling tower is going to be gone, now this roof is going to be, a lot more busy than it currently is, where there's really nothing on it.
Yes, let's get out a lot more equipment up there. Absolutely.
So just something to think about that I think would be beneficial. And I'm also another roof question is, because of all the stormwater management, and Reston, we're home to Terracet Elementary with rooftop vegetation. Do you guys look into doing any sort of like live roof system or anything that could?
We did. Obviously the existing roofs aren't strong enough, obviously, but the additions could have been made strong enough. We considered it in concept design, early on in concept, and the school district doesn't think it's in the budget, and they also have concerns about their maintenance regime with it. So right now we don't have green roofs, though we considered them over the administration wing on the east side of the building at one point. I will say one thing I didn't acknowledge is that we are making all the roofs solar ready. So we're actually going back into the existing roofs and structurally reinforcing the existing roofs to accept new PV panels when the funds for that become available. So the entire existing building, some of the existing roofs could accommodate the PVs, but easily half of them couldn't. So all those existing roofs are being upgraded. And then obviously the new roofs were designed to have PV as well. So we're not going to be able to buy the PVs in this go round, but the infrastructure is there for it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. It's a big expansive roof, flat roof. So, to me, it's always an opportunity for live roof.
Absolutely.
Obviously all the rooftop equipment, you guys are going to be doing a good number of structural, modifications to support that. So just a thought. I know budget is a stance, but this is obviously not a low budget project based on the current scope that I see. So I hope, just throwing it out there. Going back to the window question. So for the library window, I think why the storefront and the color variation is successful is because, like, if you go to the 3D rendering, where's that page?
The library view is page 60.
It's like at the very end.
Yeah.
So this has the storefront projecting out.
Correct.
About 4 inches. Is that accurate? Is that is the sense? So I wonder at the administration wing if something was employed to be similar to this, because I feel like this is successful, whereas I think the administration wing, it's like you're playing with spandrel panels and trying to make it unique and fun, but then maybe less is more by just maybe a simple projection of the storefront might be able to get you that. And it may just all be anodized. It may not have a color to it, but it at least brings it, off that facade a little bit. Maybe could I don't know, help it be a little bit more cohesive for the building in general. Because I think this library addition is really successful in how you guys have, put all the windows and the masonry with the parapet. Like, I just think it looks aesthetically, it looks the best from the whole project. And I think the entrance, though, this is obviously the parent entrance, and then the bus entrance, I feel like it's just being it's a little bit behind it. That's all. So I think we've already kind of harped on a little bit of restudying that just a tad, but maybe that's a way you could look at it. The last comment I had was the cornice, these like panels that are trying to mimic the brick color. How tall is that you have there? Is that because you have 3 panels shown?
It's quite substantial. I don't have the dimension handy, but it's on the order of 5 or 6 feet.
Is that like, and then that panel's like an Aluka bond panel, like a.
It's not central. It's Citadel. It's a Citadel metal panel.
But like it has a thickness. It has like a thickness to it.
Yes.
So it'll slightly stick out off of the past the brick, basically.
Correct. It has effectively a sleeper that goes on. So the furthest point out of the cornice is where we're going to put this. Then we're going to fur out the rest of the cornice.
And it's all basically just to hide that existing.
Correct.
Cornice, you want to call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm worried about that condition at the top of the window. And just, I don't know. I'm just worried. It looks like we're putting a hat that doesn't quite fit on the building. Because like if you look at the library here, you have a decent overhang that creates a nice shadow line. And this is almost like it's not sticking out far enough to quite create that shadow line. And so I'm wondering if there's a way, like, does it need to stick out farther? Does it need to step? Does it need to, I don't know. The 3 panels is throwing me off. It's almost, I know the pattern kind of takes around to the front, but it'd almost be nicer if it was either like one big panel or just 2 panels with one middle line reveal. I just think the 3 panels,
we can definitely look at that. Fast. Yeah, no, we can. I mean, these panels are limited up to 60 inches in one direction, but we can definitely look at subdividing it differently. We can look at other things as well. I will say we're not inclined to really want to introduce or reintroduce the step, because that's one of the things that the school district is asking us to really conceal, is that there's already a step in the profile of the existing cornice.
Okay.
But no, your point's well taken, and we can study how that's panelized.
And then there was one question from an affected party that they weren't able to unmute. They just had a question about the signage. And is the signage going to be lit? Like lit or uplit, or what is kind of
on the building? On the building?
Yes, correct. On the building, and then any monument sign, if you guys are all monument sign.
We currently have not designed it to be lit, but that's a good question. I need to go to the client on that and ask them if they want it or if it's permitted even. I will say that there's an existing sign, freestanding monument sign in front of the school in the stormwater, what is just the edge of the stormwater management area, that we're going to have to relocate. So that's out in the east side of the school.
Okay, just a thought so you guys can think about that and come back with a little bit more detail.
Sure.
Does anybody have a motion that they would like to make? I'll make a motion to approve for in concept only for the school for the application as submitted, with the feedback heard from the board members, where we're really trying to restudy a little bit on the administration wing fenestration, as well as the main entrance. Let's call it the 2-story entryway. fenestration slash spandrel panel, metal panel design, as well as rooftop screening, and a little bit more on a little bit more detail on the landscape and site lighting. Well, not really landscape, but more site lighting plan. More detail needed on those items. Did I miss anything, team?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on it? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Pete. All right.
Have a nice night, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and expertise. We appreciate your input.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation.
Right.
Appreciate your hard work.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to last agenda item H. 1631 Washington Plaza, Deli Italiano.
All right, I do have the representatives and the applicant unmuted. Graham? Yes, sir. Stephanie?
Hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome back. Long time.
3 years, Mike. That's a long time, right?
Graham, we can't hear you. I see you talking, but I can't hear you. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. Just as a heads up. While he tries to figure that out. So you guys are back. We had some final things that we asked you guys for, and I believe you guys provided all of those. Yes, or do you want to take it away, or do you want to wait for Graham?
Let's wait for Graham because he's got everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think he's trying to dial in on his phone now, it looks like.
Dial in now.
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yes, so I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have our A&E design team on the call, but we were following up on the conditional approval questions or details that were requested from the board. And so we updated the rendering to address the comments from the October meeting. And you'll see those highlighted and labeled A, B, C, and D. I think there were 4 main requests from the conditional approval. And we're happy to go through any questions or particulars.
Since there are APs on this, I'll have to hear from them first. So if you want to, do you want to walk us just through quickly what you guys have? I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but I think it'd be beneficial just to walk us through real quick, just to get everyone back on board of what's going on. And then we'll hear from the affected parties, and then we'll come back and ask you any questions.
Sure. So I see there's a letter here. And so we essentially just followed this letter. I can't see that letter very well on my screen, but let me go to the document I can see on my screen. So yeah, there was a couple comments from the October correspondence. The first one was getting a letter from LARCA for the proposed refrigerant lines, which has been completed. And so that has already been outlined in the previous document, but it's labeled in this document. There was dimension requests for the width of the shaft, so that's detailed. There were updated structural drawings to show the connection and a zero clearance for the duct, dropping it to the parapet height. There's elevation heights for the parapet and the party wall, including some side elevations showing the existing louver and the specification sheet for the screen on the roof. And then there was a request to provide some side-by-side comparison photos for the proposed colors for the Lucabond panels, which match the existing gutters, and there's some other features out there that are in this prefab metal paint. And so that's also included. If you scroll down, so this set of documents, you probably, LaShonda, I know we traded some emails today to make sure that that we had the set of documents that's labeled. Is that possible to pull it up? Yeah, there you go.
You're at the first document.
Awesome.
Please
Thank
let
you.
me know when you'd like to move forward.
Yeah, that's great. So this sheet here just labels, the requested items in the exact order from the October correspondence. And we can just go through this very quickly if you want to scroll to the next sheet. Nothing changed on this sheet. We can go to the next, please. So on this sheet, there's just a dimension in the top right corner, which outlines the roof plan, which is a section 4 in the top right corner. That was a dimension that essentially with the engineers got this as tight as possible to the ductwork to minimize any sightline issues from windows as best possible. We can scroll to the next sheet. Here, there's elevation details that show the actual location of the louver on the sidewall. That was a question, and you'll see the cloud with dimensions. Originally, it was slightly in another location, but because of the main water pipes to the building, Larka had requested us to move the louver. There's also structural steel above this, so there was no other place that this wall louver could go for the makeup air. And the size of it was driven by the engineering to make sure it didn't make any noise and it wasn't pulling in water if there was any kind of rain coming down. We can go to the next sheet. There's also some details on the screen that you can see there. The overall height of the ductwork was dropped and transitioned to a double spiral insulated duct, so that the county had originally required that this be 18 inches from combustible materials. And so that's why in previous renderings, and as it exists now, it extends above that roof line. And so this new rendering lowers that ductwork, tight to the roof, and satisfies Fairfax County Mechanical Code by transitioning the duct. And I think, Michael, you had made that suggestion to us, which was helpful. You'll see if we go to the next sheet, you'll see some side elevations that just detail the structural framing and the bracing. The architect got input from the structural engineer and the Lucabond panel manufacturer that details, this panel application on an exterior of a building. And there's some considerations for, the water management. Water can weep down through and out. You'll see dimensions for all of this that was requested as well. If we scroll down to the next sheet, you'll see requested information on the louver screen, and also if you scroll down below this detail, you'll see the photo comparison of the actual downspout metal panel, and then the proposed sample. And this was the closest color match, yes, that was available. You'll see that there's a lookup on, manufacturer's recommendation for the attachment methods. And so the plan is to follow, the manufacturer's guidelines on the installation. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything to talk through.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. Let me go to hear from the affected parties, and then we'll come back and ask you any questions, okay?
Thank you.
Staff, I'm sure you have the list of affected parties. I just want to remind, if you're representing yourself, it's 3 minutes. Staff is monitoring the time to state your affected party status. And then if you're representing a group, just let me know and you can have 5 minutes to represent the group. So LaShonda, take it away.
All right. Alec Berry, I just asked you to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the DRB's concern for resident owners' quality of life and property values. I've lived in Reston since 1969. My dream has always been to live at Lake Anne, which in 1999 was realized. I moved in. Just like my neighbors before me and my neighbors after, I signed documents from RA and LARCA indicating I understood the covenants and all the restrictions. I was confident that all my neighbors also had signed those same things. I was also attracted to Lake Anne in particular, since it was designated as a historic district within the county. I had confidence that RA, LARCA, and the county would work together to preserve the as-built character of the existing structure, urban design relationships, and landscape design rather than compatible new construction. I had every reason to believe that Lake Anne and my home would remain essentially the same. Whatever might happen elsewhere in Reston, Lake Anne would be Lake Anne. Deli Italiano assured the DRB that they had received licenses, permits, or approvals that may be necessary or required by state and local authorities. The approval from LARCA clearly states failure to obtain County Architectural Review Board and approval of exact plans and specifications concept by the Reston Association rescinds any approval by LARCA. Please check with the county for compliance. To date, the Fairfax County ARB has not reviewed or approved this project. It has not even been submitted. Therefore, at this time, there is not approval from LARCA. Article 6, protective covenants and elements of the Reston deed, section 1D2, any person or entity obtaining approval from the DRB shall not deviate from the plans and specifications approved without the prior written consent of the DRB. Deli Italiano has done this several times, including the large brackets that were installed without prior approval, which has caused obvious damage to the exterior wall. And this revision suggests at least 42 additional attachments to the wall. And again, just look at it. Just take a look at it. If you haven't been to Lake Anne to take a look, you just look at it. This is wrong. This is just wrong. And now they're proposing something bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Mr. Ramon Pardo. Asking you to unmute. Mr. Pardo, you're unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thanks. I just want to echo Alec's concern. I'm his neighbor, and I must admit that if either Alec or I were trying to sell our property right now, me being in real estate, all of you, everybody would have a big lawsuit on their hands, as we wouldn't be able to sell it. So I just want to point out, so when this meeting came about, I reached out to the folks on LARCA board, and they said, I asked them if there had been any sort of recent approvals. So if you go to page 6, the most recent approval, it says install 3 holes at planter above unit for the refrigerant lines that lines to come up 18 inches beside grease duct. I want the board, the DRB, to make note of that, because it's nothing like what the plans are saying. And let me remind the board that I have a multifaceted complaint with Fairfax County because the improper permits have been applied for. They applied for an interior alteration permits, and it did not go through the Fairfax County Architectural Review Board. So if you just case in point, scroll down to slide 19. That's a clear violation of code. That is a rated separation, 1963. There was no unseparated mixed use in play. So if there is a fire in Delia Italiano, my unit and Alex's unit, because of the fenestration in the front of the unit, is at risk. That perforation in slide 19 has so many code violations I can't even mention. Aside from the aesthetics of the shaft, I'm in pursuit, and I think Alex can agree with me that we're in pursuit of legal action because this is a Mickey Mouse job. So if you go to slide 20, this is the proposed again, I'm going to repeat this with a Sharpie, just like I said in the last meeting. This is my unit here on slide 20. This is a Sharpie telling us that there's refrigerant lines. Now that's not what they're saying in the current approval. The refrigerant lines are supposed to be 18 inches from their shaft. So I just, my problem here is that these guys have said they're going to do something. They set out plans and they don't do anything according to the plans. So I hope that the DRB.
I apologize. Thank you so much, Mr. Pardo, for your comments, your time. Next, we have Stephen Vickery. I was unable to identify Mr. Vickery. Mary and Lynn Maselli. If you are present, please raise your hand. If not, we will move on to the next person. Shelley Mastron. Let's see. Does not look like we have a Miss Mastron here. If I do call anyone's name and you're here, if you could please raise your hand so you can address the board. Elena. Oh, no, Elena. Okay, so we do have a Carolyn. Let's see, Carolyn. I saw Carolyn earlier. Did she drop off? Nope. Carolyn, I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay, hey, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand.
No problem, no problem.
Anyway, I'm with the Reston Museum, which is also on the plaza, and was mostly here to hear what the other tenants had to say, but I think all of us on the board agree that the existing shaft is really unsightly, and I'm concerned about having even more changes occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Christopher Ditz.
I did see him on the call earlier.
Mr. Ditz, if you are on the call, could you please raise your hand? Or you could send us a message in the chat. And then the next is going to be Thomas Miller, asking Mr. Miller to unmute.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You are unmuted.
All right. I go by Mason Miller. That's how most people around Reston would know me. I moved to Reston at the end of 1971. And as a child, I used to walk to Lake Ann Plaza regularly, and I arrived via the walkway that came in from Chimney House Road. And I guess about a year ago, I don't remember the exact date, when I was walking in from that direction, I could not believe the Barry's place. That has no place on Lake Ann Plaza. I'm really shocked that the DRB approved it in the first place. As Alec commented earlier, Lake Ann, of all places, it's supposed to be left intact. And as I'm reading about RELAC getting reformed to accommodate with the commercial venture plan, one of the things you hear about is the noise concerns. Well, there is no way that a ventilation shaft like that is going to be, any less loud than an HVAC unit on the roof of each of one of these places would be. And while I know that whatever happened, the DRB has to live with its previous decisions, what has been built there now is not what they previously approved. And I would say, stop digging in deeper. This really needs to stop. If they can't get in compliance with the county, and I was interested in going and pulling their permits to see what they had. There are no construction permits in the window. Now, it's been years and years, but I used to be, involved in commercial property management, and you had to keep your permit in the window from beginning to end. Now, maybe something's changed. Maybe the county doesn't care about that, but I do think it is indicative of the approach that these folks have been taking in building this. And I would really strongly encourage the board to remember that this already has significantly changed the roof line of Lake Ann Plaza. And as you look at, and if you could go to the picture in their application of what they've built to date, I mean, it's blocking sunlight. And, you're not supposed to approve anything that would adversely impact the property values of a neighboring unit. I mean, how can you say, look, it's casting a shadow in the upper right corner? Look at how much of that window's sunlight is now being, obscured. But I'm not as even upset about Mr. Barry's, sunlight getting obscured as what it has done to the roof line and the
Pardon me, Mr. Miller. Thank you so much. Your time is up.
silhouette.
Pardon me, Mr.
All
Miller.
right.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else step?
Nope, that is all of the affected parties listed.
Okay. Let me go around the room and see if there's any questions for the applicant. And then we will have some discussion. John? John, you still here?
He's still here. He's just muted.
You're muted, John. Oh, he can't unmute, maybe?
He definitely has the ability to. John, if you can unmute yourself for him. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I have no questions at this point.
Okay. Brian?
I guess I just want to understand maybe from the applicant, maybe a response to there are a lot of claims being thrown around that things are not being built as what we're seeing on the plans. And so I guess we should give the applicant a chance to respond to that.
Graham, are you there? You guys unmute Graham.
There you are.
Yes. Well, I think, this is a multi-year, process that unfolded. And when we look back at where all this began, there was a different group at LARCA that was directing, the initial concept, and maybe this is you know, it's a long path that's got us here, but you know, the original design was submitted to be skinned in the brick so that you didn't see any of the ductwork. That was the package that the Deli Italiano put together, that the designers submitted. And the LARCA board met with us and Karen, and there was another group there, Jason, building engineer, and they reviewed that, sent us a letter, or sent the Deli a letter requesting that it not be skinned in the same matching brick, but that it be run in exposed ductwork to be painted Reston brown. So that began a whole journey, for better or for worse, of what the ductwork is that's there now. And certainly, you know, the county had many involvement steps, you know, that modified this plan, including the location of the units. Originally, it was right on the building edge, but they required a guardrail, or it had to be 10 foot off the building edge. So that drove, you know, the screen to where it is and set the unit back off the roof line. So yeah, but in terms of answering, you know, the question about the construction's not done. We've at every stop of this journey complied with Reston and LARCA. And when they told us there was issues and to stop, we stopped. And so, you know, so we pulled the permits out of the window and stopped work. But it's our intent to finish it and finish it well, according to the directions that we've been given. And so during the last, you know, conditional approval, you know, we were requested to pursue, you know, the skinning and the metal panels and dropping it down. There's an existing parapet wall there. One of the residents mentioned just this divider, this shadow, but there's already a shadow there, because this existing wall separates the two spaces. And so, you know, Fairfax County is involved in this and has inspected it, and anybody can look up its public record. So we certainly are not, you know, in this community to do any type of sub-level work. And I'm happy to meet with any of the residents to talk through any concerns about any of the work. But I think the point of this hearing is to finalize a path to get the business open. And so we're certainly, you know, acknowledge that that's going to mean different things for different people, and we want to be respectful to that and be as best we can a good community member. But the Deli Italiano also has a right to occupy the space as a commercial restaurant, and so by right they should have a path to the common elements, including the roof. And there's no way through this, there's no other path to the roof, and every different option was pursued. But yeah, that would be my comments in response.
And the only thing I would piggyback off of that, Graham, have you guys pursued the Lake Ann Historic Review Board process?
Cameron, I don't think is on this call, but he had connected with the ARB, and for whatever their reasons, you know, and they put it in writing, which was sent to Reston Association, that they would not be reviewing the documents. It's not as though the Deli or the design team skipped any steps, but for whatever their process is, they put in writing that they would not be reviewing it. So we didn't have another step to take there. But all this has spanned several years. This has been going on for 3 years. And, you know, just from a business perspective, there's not many small businesses that can survive. And I'm not Deli Italiano. I'm the construction group that's working with them. But there's not many businesses that can survive buying, leasing their equipment, moving into a space, and going through this type of experience. So our goal is to be a value add to the community. I think that's plain to see. If you go to any of their locations, you'll see that. You know, they employ a lot of high school students. They help people. You know, they do a lot of good work in the community. We go there at Thanksgiving, go there at Christmas, go there over the holidays. They're constantly pouring back into the community. So I see, you know, this as a very good thing for Lake Ann and a very good thing for home values. You know, it needs life in there.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Brian, did you have anything else from a design perspective or questions?
No.
Bruce?
Nothing in addition.
Emily?
Nothing for me, Michael.
Elena?
Nothing for me, thank you.
The only question I have is when, and it's I know it's not up to you guys, but when is that planting area in front of those units going to be back up and kind of plantable? Do you know?
We don't own, I should say the deli doesn't own that space.
I know it's not, it's common property space. I just was curious if you knew.
I don't. No, I do not know.
And how do you know how deep the plant, you know, the soil will be there? Is it like 4 inches? Is it 8 inches? I couldn't tell. I'm just trying to figure out what type of plants could survive there. Is kind of is where I'm leading towards.
Yeah, I don't have any information on that. I know they came out and they were doing some waterproofing work, but that was many months ago. We haven't been back there since.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then my only other question from a design standpoint is so unfortunately the thing sticks out just past that kind of, let's call it the party wall, about 5.5 inches based on the drawing. I don't even know what slide this is, slide 9. And you can kind of see it on that rendering there, but slide 9, if you zoom in on the upper right-hand corner. So I just want to make sure that, you know, when you guys go to construction, if this is approved, that all things are accounted for. So the panel is going to be you'll have 2 sides of panel, but you'll actually have 3 sides of panel because you're going to have that 5.5 inch return piece there. What does that joint, is it just going to be like a shadow line between that and the existing party wall? Are you going to, because these panels are removable or sort of removable, right? They're mechanically fastened. So there is going to be a panel that returns on that side as well.
Yeah, there will be finished 3 sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's a good point because the Alucobond, you know, manufacturer would give us you know, a final shop drawing, and it will have a cut sheet that will you know, that will measure and fabricate each of the panels, which so that end cap would be mechanically fastened just like the face piece.
Okay. And what, you know, one thing I've looked at when I've done this is, you know, one of the comments was about sun and light, and, you know, this part of the building is facing kind of northeast, and the sun comes up on the east there, and it kind of works its way around the back, kind of along the bottom part. It doesn't, so the sun path is not affected by this shaft because of where the sun comes up and sets. Just so I think that's initially why we were okay with the shaft as well, is that we didn't feel that it had a huge impact on the window. Obviously it grew a little bit, so that's not been ideal. So that's a little bit what we're working with now. But I do think that's a lot of the reason why we've kind of got to where we are, and we've tried to minimize how this thing enters into the roof with, you know, going to zero clearance to non-combustible to really make that 90-degree turn and get that big exhaust fan screened so you don't see it. I think overall, you guys have met all of the kind of all the requirements that we have requested. Also for the refrigerant lines, the way I read your thing, and I think this is what you guys meant, is that they're going to come up through the slab 18 inches to the right of your duct, and then from your drawing, they basically run under the dirt over to the gutter, and then we'll go up the side of the gutter. Correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, but that is what your letter was saying. Basically, you come up 18 inches to the right of the shaft, and then you'll be attached to the let's say the underside of the planter bed, or I guess the top side of the planter bed, and you'll work your way over to the gutter and then up the wall over there. Is that accurate?
Correct, yes. And then that gets wrapped in the same gutter material, downspout material, so it's concealed,
Okay.
accessible and removable.
Yeah, and good thing, and that's what's one thing with the removable comment, that when we deal with historic properties, and when I've done it in a professional capacity, the big thing about alterations to a historic property is, and I think the reason why they initially wanted a painted ductwork is you want to be able to put the property back the way it originally was built without major modifications being needed. So some mechanically fastened structural support and just removing the ductwork rather than trying to integrate the brickwork, I think was kind of the intent of LARCA, design the review board from the beginning. And I think that's a big thing with historic preservation is, if you do an addition to a property, that it's able to be removed if in the future it's no longer needed.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because everything along this roof is removable. The steel I-beams that this equipment sits on is not touching the roof, but it's sitting on the bearing walls, the separation walls. And, everything could, in theory, be removed if, there was a different use or something in the future happened.
All right, let me go around the room, see if anyone has any further comments, and then we'll see if we can come to a motion here. Anybody have any further comments? Just kind of leave it open. Anyone want to make a motion? I think the biggest issue right now with this thing is that it's incomplete. And so the community sees an incomplete shaft, and it's been an eyesore, and it has been for, going on 2 years now. The Alucobond panels are going to be a substantial improvement to what's there now. I don't know the correct wording for it, but I do believe I want to give what's the right wording for architecture. What I've still been hung up, and one thing I've asked staff is this architecture review board for the historic side of things. We are one entity, LARCA is one entity, and the only thing that I think we need to keep saying is that you guys still need to, I know you guys have tried to pursue it, and it keeps coming up. To me, the alteration to a historic property, it usually always needs to go through it. I'm having to do it right now for the Workhouse Lorton project down in the other part of the county, for the exact same situation, for a mechanical, exhaust fan. So I do know that there is a process for it. I don't know, but I can't enforce it, but it's something that I do think you guys should continue to pursue, to just alleviate the community concerns as well. With that said, I'll make a motion to approve the plan as submitted, but with the following requirement that the shaft and the building components that have been altered would need to go back to the original construction, with when and if this shaft is no longer needed for the commercial occupant below. And that way and that's the end of my motion and just some comment on it. I'm just thinking that if this is, no longer a deli in 10 years and it goes back to being a, ice cream shop that didn't need a vent, that the owner of the condo, because it is a condo down there, would need to remove this piece of equipment if it is not in use. And it's designed for that exact purpose. That's why it's designed the way it is that it can be removed. So that's kind of my thinking behind that. I don't know if anyone has any comment on that.
I think that that's a good compromise. I think that in my experience, restoration clauses are common in situations like these.
And, once again, it's still strongly encouraged to pursue the Fairfax County Historic approval process, because I know it exists, because I know I have a project going through it right now. So does anyone have any other further comment on my motion? Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, let me take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any against?
Aye.
Against? Any abstentions? So I had 5 yays and 1 nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Yasser.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Staff, do we have anything else?
That is it.
All right. Long one to start the year.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. I think there's a couple people that need to if they want to reapply, I think, for seats. I know I'm one of them. I haven't even done it one.
And Jim.
And just Jim. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Good
Thank
evening.
you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, staff.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.